the democracy. He would make a speech before a beautiful Maryland crowd like this, and FDR would say, well, the royalists and the plutocrats say you invest money at the top of society and a little bit will drip down on everybody else. But the democracy says you invest in the working majority of America. We will all rise together. We will all rise together. That's what the democracy says. We're the party that defends free and fair elections against political coups and violent insurrections. And we stand with our great public servants like teachers and firefighters and police officers and doctors and nurses, and not the violent right-wing extremists who set upon hundreds of our officers on January 6th, wounding, injuring, hospitalizing more than 150 of them. That's not our side. We stand with the officers. We stand with the firefighters. We stand with the teachers. We stand with public servants in America. That's who we are. We're the party that just passed the most sweeping climate change legislation in the history of the world. We just did that because we love humanity that much. We're the party that just ended Big Pharma's power to set sky-high drug prices for people on Medicare by finally giving the government the power to negotiate for lower drug prices. It was a Republican committee chairman who slipped that rider in, saying the government couldn't negotiate with Big Pharma and Medicare, even though the government can do it in Medicaid, it can do it in the VA, but it cost us hundreds of billions of dollars over the years, that prohibition. And if they ever were to get back in office, if they were ever to take control of Congress, they would repeal the legislation we just passed, and again, they would stop us from negotiating for lower drug prices. Do you want lower prescription drug prices in America? That's the question. All over the world, my friends, all over the world, the autocrats and the kleptocrats, the bullies and the dictators have found each other. But under the leadership of President Joe Biden, the Democrats will beat the autocrats and the kleptocrats and the theocrats. We are going to stand for democracy and freedom and human rights all over the world. That's what America is. That's who we are. Joe Biden shows up for us every single day. Are you going to show up for Joe Biden in November? Are you going to show up and campaign until November? Are you going to show up for lower drug prices? Are you going to show up for climate rescue? Are you going to show up for reproductive freedom in America? My friends, I'm going to leave you with the words of two people I've held close to my heart through this tough period. One, the great Marylander, Frederick Douglass, born an hour away from here at the Wye River Plantation, into slavery. He escaped from slavery to become our great freedom fighter, our great abolitionist, all the way through the war and into the Reconstruction. And he said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. And the struggle may be moral, it may be physical, it may be moral and physical, but there must be struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. A message to you from the 19th century from a great Marylander, Frederick Douglass. And I leave you finally with the words of the great Tom Paine, after whom my son Tommy was named. And Tom Paine came to America 1774, 2 years before the American Revolution, 2 years before the Declaration, 2 years before he would write that explosive democratic pamphlet called Common Sense. And he looked out and he saw America and he fell in love with the dream of America, even seeing all of its flaws at the time. And he was an early abolitionist and he was an early feminist who wanted to give women the right to vote. But Tom Paine said that America would become an asylum to humanity. not an insane asylum, mind you, but he said a place of refuge for people fleeing from political and religious and economic oppression from all over the world. And he said when America launched as the first modern, democratic, self-governing society, the cause of America would become the cause of all mankind. And so in 1776, after he wrote Common Sense, when we were in the American Revolution, it was a tough time like today. And the pro-democracy forces were running around saying, can we do it? Can we really beat the autocrats and the kings and the czars and the emperors and the monarchs? And everybody's saying, what's the message and who's doing the messaging and all that? And Tom Paine wrote this pamphlet called The Crisis, and I'm going to update the language a little bit for you. At the instruction of Speaker Pelosi, who said Paine wouldn't mind because he was an early feminist. And Tom Paine said this. He said, these are the times that try men and women's souls. These are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone who stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Let's make that victory ours in 2022 and 2024. Thank you, Maryland. Thank you, Democrats and Independents. And Liz Cheney, Republicans, too.
Please welcome House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer.
These are the times that try Steny Hoyer's soul following Jamie Raskin in that rousing speech that he just gave. I am told as I walked out here, the president is ready to speak. So I know the president is waiting with bated breath for me to give a 10 or 15-minute oration. Just like the rest of you. What Jamie Raskin said is absolutely true of what and who we are. The Democratic Party, the party of democracy, the party of the people, by the people, and for the people. I've got a good speech here. Write me if you want to see it. But I do want to give this message. Joe Biden's not on the ballot technically, but Joe Biden's on the ballot. And Joe Biden needs your support. Joe Biden needs a Democratic Congress. Joe Biden needs the voice of the people to rise up and say, Joe Biden is doing what he said he would do. He kept families from falling through the cracks. He got shots in arms, so we're not here with masks for the most part. He got kids in school. He got money in pockets. And then he got a bill that's going to rebuild America, build it better and stronger and more competitive. That's what Joe Biden did. And then he passed a CHIPS bill. And both the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS bill said we're going to have organized workers who can bargain collectively, work on those projects. There has been no more pro-worker president in the history of the United States of America than Joe Biden. And then we passed the IRA for the USA. We want the ERA as well. Inflation is hurting our people, and we are empathetic, and Joe Biden says it's our #1 priority. And what did we do? We brought down costs for prescription drugs. We brought down costs for the Affordable Care Act. We provided jobs for people. 3.5% unemployment, 9.5 million people employed during the course of this administration, 2.5 million, 2.8 to be exact, million jobs lost during the Trump administration. All those policies are on the ballot. And Biden is on the ballot. But aren't we glad that we have somebody on our ballot named Wes Moore? A man of energy, of vision, of determination, who has vowed, as he did as the 82nd Airborne Division went to battle, leave no one behind. Not one. I call the Republican Party the yo-yo party. The yo-yo stands for you're on your own. We're not for minimum wage. We're not for protecting women against violence. We're not for women's freedom and choice. That's the party of you're on your own. We're not for helping you with climate crisis. You're on your own. Ladies and gentlemen, Wes Moore knows that you're not on your own. He is going to be by your side, whoever you are, wherever you are in this state. And Aruna Miller from this county, and Anthony Brown as Attorney General, and Brooke Learman as Comptroller of our state. What a team! What a team for Maryland! What a team for the people! And so, because Joe Biden is ready to speak, I think it's about time for me to leave the stage, but I want to do so. I got into politics because John Kennedy came to the University of Maryland and talked about young people. A lot of young people here. And apparently there are a lot of people who think they're young. Kennedy was elected President of the United States, and he gave a great inaugural address. You ought to read it. And he said this: the energy, the faith, the devotion we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. My fellow Democrats, my fellow Americans, my fellow independents, my fellow Republicans who respect truth and facts and science. Our country, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence needs our energy, our faith, and our devotion, because democracy and our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence is on the ballot. The great Secretary of State Madeleine Albright wrote a book, Fascism, A Warning, in which she talked about fascist after fascist after fascist. We think it can't happen here. We hold these truths to be self-evident. But ladies and gentlemen, they are not self-executing. It relies on us. We can get the job done. You bring your energy, your faith, and your devotion to electing Wes Moore, Democrats throughout the Congress of the United States. We've got two great United States senators. Ben Cardin's going to speak after me. Chris Van Hollen, I think, was on the video. But we're in this together. One nation, indivisible. Too many people in the Congress of the United States stand up, put their hand over their heart, and give that Pledge of Allegiance. But they don't mean indivisible, because they're trying to divide America by race, by gender, by nationality, by whatever arbitrary distinction you want to make. But we are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is up to us. God bless you. Godspeed. Thank you. Thank you.
I've been across our state meeting Marylanders from all different backgrounds and talking about the issues that matter to us, to workers who want to provide for their families, to teachers who spend their time uplifting the next generation, and students who are furthering their education, to women who have had abortions and want to make sure our rights are preserved, to young people who are working to protect our planet from climate change. And when I talk to my fellow Marylanders about what Democrats are doing to improve their lives, I have a lot to say. Just yesterday, President Biden fulfilled a campaign promise and took an incredible step to cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for millions of Americans. Nearly 90% of relief dollars will go to borrowers earning less than $75,000 per year, helping those who need it most. Democrats are lowering costs and making healthcare and energy more affordable through the Inflation Reduction Act, capping prices on insulin and prescription drugs for seniors, siding with people over special interests, and ushering in the most historic climate legislation to ever exist. Democrats stood up for labor and the economy by passing the CHIPS Act to create good-paying American jobs and strengthen American supply chains and support workers. And we are the party fighting for fundamental freedoms, while extreme MAGA Republicans are focused on cutting health care, Medicare, and Social Security and taking us backwards on abortion. The choice in November could not be more important. The people I talk to across the state are fired up. Progress happens when people like us go to the polls, make our voices heard, and vote for real leaders. That is what we have to do on November 8th. We have to get out and vote for Democrats in Maryland, up and down the ballot. That's how we're going to continue to make people's lives better. To take action and join us in doing everything we can to support Maryland, to elect Maryland Democrats, go to joebiden.com. The stakes are too high, and we have the power to keep making a change. Now, I am proud to introduce one of the trailblazing changemakers that we will elect this November. A leader who understands Maryland and is fighting for opportunity for all of us. Our next governor, Wes Moore.
What's going on, Montgomery County? It is great to be here in the place of my birth. It is great to be here in one of Maryland's true treasures. It is great to see you. And it is great to be here in the hometown of your next Lieutenant Governor, the remarkable Aruna Miller. Andrea, bless you. Bless you for your leadership, because the way we are going to win this race, it is going to be door to door, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. We are going to win this race because we are going to outwork everybody. And I'm thankful for your leadership. I'm also so incredibly thankful for our federal delegation. You heard earlier from Senator Cardin, from Leader Hoyer, who I just always say, that's not just a title, that's a descriptor of who he is in terms of Leader Hoyer. We have the best federal delegation that anybody could ask for. And we're all educators out here. I am so grateful to be out here with so many educators. We thank President Biden, and also we thank President Biden, but also, let's not forget, we thank our remarkable First Lady, Dr. Joe Biden as well. Who is an extraordinary champion for our schools, an extraordinary champion for our community colleges. I always say, and by the way, this right here is home to the extraordinary Montgomery College. And I always say I'm proud of the fact that I'm the only candidate in this race with an associate's degree. And people laugh and they're like, but hold on, you were the first black Rhodes Scholar in the history of Johns Hopkins University, but the ring you wear is from your junior college. And I tell people that's right, because it's my foundation. And what we have to ensure is that every single child and every single student has a chance to find their own foundation as well. You know, my family likes to say we come from a long line of preachers and teachers. And I got a whole lot of family out here tonight. I got family, aunts who are educators. I got cousins who are educators, mother-in-law. Both my grandmothers were educators. We come from a long line of preachers and teachers, and I know that I would not be here had it not been for educators who saw a promise in me when, frankly, I did not see it in myself. I would not be here had it not been for educators who saw a young man who was dealing with troubles and traumas, but who knew that our society should have a place for me as well. And I know that I'm proud to be here with my amazing mom, who's right over there. Stand up, Ma, stand up. Stand up so they can see you. My mother, who was an immigrant from Jamaica. Yeah, man. All the yardies out there. Who raised my two sisters and I as a single mom when my father died in front of me when I was almost 4 years old because he didn't get the health care that he needed. And there are people who believed and fought and advocated for us. That I know that when I first felt handcuffs on my wrists, I was 11 years old. Because we came up in communities that were over-policed, and we knew it. And despite those challenges, I had a community who believed, and a community who understood that we were going to leave no one behind. And when I was, when I was 17 years old, I joined the Army. In fact, I was too young to sign the paperwork when I first joined the Army. My mother had to sign the paperwork for me. But after my teenage years, she would sign whatever paperwork that the Army put in front of her. But they taught us a basic mantra. A mantra they asked us to live by, and I did. Leave no one behind. Leave no one behind. And I want to be clear, that is not just a mantra, that is a value statement. And let's also be clear, come January, that will be the new mission of the state of Maryland. We will be a state that leaves no one behind. We are going to be a state that's going to ensure that every Marylander can receive a world-class education and a lifelong education that creates pathways to work and wages and wealth. We are going to be a society that is going to make historic investments in apprenticeship programs and trade programs. We are going to be a state that is going to make pre-K free for every child in need. We are going to be a state that is going to create a service year option for every single high school graduate. which is not just going to make college more affordable, but it's also going to be a unique opportunity for people to be able to give back to our larger society and our larger community. And when it comes to our economy, we know and we are going to focus on the very people that actually drive our economy's growth, our small businesses and our workers. So, you know, I've run a small business, and I know how hard it can be to build, to feel supported, to have your hard work and also your risk-taking recognized. And we are going to ensure that our state is not going to be the best place to live and to grow, but also to retire by allowing our seniors to age in place and to age with dignity. Maryland, listen, this is our time. This is our decade. This is the time when Maryland is going to lead. Now, I do want to be clear, though. You know, ever since our primary win, it's been amazing how many people have come up and said, you know, isn't it great that Dan Cox won and you're running against Dan Cox in the general? My answer is clear and it is consistent. Do not underestimate what we're against. Do not underestimate what we are up against. It is not great that come November we are running against an election denier. You know, for me, patriotism meant leaving my family and putting on our nation's uniform and serving with the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. And I'm proud of the fact that one of my brothers who I serve with, Devin Flavin, is here tonight as well. And God bless you, Flavin. It's great to see you, man. But let's be clear, for our opponent, patriotism for him means organizing buses to join him on January 6th. It's not a wonder why our current governor, a Republican, Larry Hogan, has said he will not support him, and in fact, he went further to say, I wouldn't even give him a tour of the governor's office. But Dan Cox is not an opponent. He's a threat. And let's be clear, a threat to women in Maryland who deserve to make their own health care decisions and who have access to safe and legal abortions. A threat to our responsibility that every child in the state of Maryland has access to a world-class public school. A threat to those who believe in free and fair democracies, and a threat to the Constitution that I swore to defend. But I also want people to understand this too. The reason that we are going to win in November is not because we are asking people to be afraid of something. The reason that we are going to win in November and up and down the ballot all across the state is because we are going to give Marylanders something to believe in. And I'm not just talking about Democratic Marylanders. This is a time for all Marylanders to rally around a future not based in lies and conspiracy theories, but one that's based in optimism, concrete proposals, and collective progress. And when people ask me, well, how do you think you can do this? How do you think in this kind of climate that you can actually bring people together? My answer is this. It's how I've always led. It's how I've always led. And my answer is this. You know, I tell people, when I was leading soldiers in combat in Afghanistan, you know a question I never once asked my soldiers? What's your political party? It didn't matter. We had one job, one goal. My mission, my objective, was to rally our entire unit around a singular goal and to accomplish it collectively. It didn't matter. And I know right now people are tired of being at each other's throats, especially because we don't have to be. That we can actually believe and dream together and accomplish big things together. And that's why today I'm asking all Marylanders to remember that our best days are actually ahead of us, and that we together can build a state where those who came before us, that they hope for, and those that will come after us, that they deserve. So I'm asking all of Marylanders to remember this is our time. My name is Wes Moore, the son of an immigrant, a combat veteran, a proud graduate of a junior college, and I'm fighting for a Maryland where we leave no one behind. And, oh, I can't wait till January, y'all. I can't wait till January. And I am so thrilled and excited that I am also about to introduce a person who knows a thing or two about lifting people up when times are tough. Because that's who Joe Biden is. Let's not forget where we were 2 years ago, everybody. Let's not forget. But he had the courage and the vision, and most importantly, the willingness to fight for all of us. From COVID recovery to bipartisan infrastructure, health care for burn pit exposed veterans, gun violence prevention to the Inflation Reduction Act. And by the way, that's in less than 2 years. So I say this to the president. Thank you for your leadership at a moment when our country needed it so badly. And while I'm thankful for the Biden administration, I'm also deeply grateful for the man that is Joe Biden. He is a public servant by every definition of the word, and someone who exudes the empathy and the humility that office should require. So while I'm thankful for what this administration has meant to Marylanders, and I am very eager to work in partnership with this administration to continue to deliver for Maryland and Maryland's families, I'm also incredibly grateful for what his example has meant to our nation. So with that, Maryland, I give you the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Hello, Maryland. Wes, thank you for that introduction. And Wes is the real deal. The real deal. Folks, he's a combat veteran. Only drawback is he's a Rhodes Scholar. Former CEO of one of the biggest anti-poverty organizations in America. And if we all do our part, the next governor of Maryland. It's been said many times before and been said here today, and excuse my back. My mother would kill me, but my back to y'all. Excuse my back. The fact of the matter is, you have literally two of the best senators in the United States Senate, Ben Cardin and Chris Van Hollen. As a matter of fact, were it not Chris being my debate partner, getting me prepared in the general election for president, I wouldn't be standing here. So if you don't like me, blame Chris. He's up for re-election this year. And I told him, I'll come campaign for him or against him, whichever will help the most. Folks, look, both Ben as well, they're strong and they're principled, they're effective. Keep them. You need them. Hell, I need them. You've got a great congressional delegation, including Steny Hoyer, who's been a friend for a long time. And how about that Jamie Raskin? Hadn't he stepped up? The man has stepped up. He's done an incredible job. I like it. He's done an incredible job coming out of a tragic circumstance with his family. You know, you got to keep them. You need them. And I said, heck, I need them. Folks, we're just 76 days away from the midterm election. 76 days. And to state the obvious, there's a lot at stake. So I want to be crystal clear about what's on the ballot this year. Your right to choose is on the ballot this year. The Social Security you paid for from the time you had a job is on the ballot. The safety of your kids from gun violence is on the ballot. And it's not hyperbole. The very survival of our planet is on the ballot. Your right to vote is on the ballot. Even the democracy. Are you ready to fight for these things now? Well, then you need to do one thing. Vote. Vote. You got it. In 2020, you and 81 million Americans voted to save our democracy. That's why
Donald Trump isn't just a former president, he is a defeated former president. And it's not hyperbole. Now you need to vote to literally save democracy again. Look, I believe America's at a genuine inflection point. It occurs every 6 or 7 generations in world history. One of the moments that changes everything. And Americans are going to have to choose. You must choose. Will we be a country that moves forward or backward? Will we build a future or obsess over the past? Will we be a nation of unity, of hope, of optimism? Not a nation of anger, violence, hatred, and division. Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans have made their choice to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division. But we've chosen a different path. Forward, the future, unity, hope, and optimism. I mean this sincerely. We choose to build a better America. This fall, there will be a choice between these two visions. And we must take our case to the American people and be crystal clear about it. There's no question. It's been a hard few years. When I came to office, we were facing a once-in-a-century pandemic. A million people died. 1 million people. And over 9 million people get up in the morning and sit at that breakfast table or the dinner table with an empty chair because of that. Historic joblessness. Businesses struggling to stay open. So much lost learning for our kids in school. But we've come a long way. In 18 months, COVID no longer controls our lives. A record number of Americans are working, 10 million since I came to office. Businesses are growing. Our schools are open. And folks, it just didn't happen. It took a lot of hard work. It took a plan that we stuck to, even in the face of unrelenting attacks from the most powerful special interests in the country. And the whole notion of the burn it all down politics of MAGA Republicans continues to be a drumbeat. But that's all. No. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go. That's okay. Folks, ignorance knows no boundaries. But we never gave up. We never gave in. And we're delivering for the American people now. And now, even our critics have been forced to acknowledge real progress. A record of big accomplishments, matched by few administrations in history. 10 million new jobs, more than we've ever created before this point in anyone's presidency. 3.5% unemployment rate, near record low in the history of this country. A 15% drop in child poverty compared to 2 years ago. And more than 220 million Americans vaccinated. Record small business creation. A big reason for all this is the American Rescue Plan that I signed into law shortly after I took office with the help of your members of Congress. That plan took America from economic crisis to economic recovery. And not a single Republican, not one single one, voted for it. Not one. Not a single Republican. We also passed the once-in-a-generation investments in our nation's roads, highways, bridges, railroads, ports, airports, clean water systems, high-speed rail, internet. The biggest investment in America since President Eisenhower's Interstate Highway Act. We got a little help. We did get some help from some Republicans passing the bill, and I'm thankful for that. But the truth is, there's a lot more Republicans taking credit for a bill that they actually voted against. You see it all over America. Right here in Maryland, you got a Republican Congress named Andy Harrison. Now, old Andy's out there touting funding for a key dredging project in his district that he voted against. It's happening all over. Maybe he'll, as they say in Southern Delaware, maybe the boy will get some religion. Look, folks, we passed the CHIPS and Science Act, a groundbreaking law. We're going to once again manufacture semiconductors as we invented that power everything in our lives right here in America. This law will create tens of thousands of construction jobs, bring billions of dollars in investment to America, and revitalize American manufacturing. Look, folks, it means we're going to build the future in America. With American workers, in American factories, producing American-made products. We took on the NRA. We took on the NRA, and we beat them. We just passed the first significant gun safety legislation in 30 years in this country. And I promise you, we're not stopping here. I'm determined to ban assault weapons in this country. I did it once before, and we will do it again. We're going to do it for those families in Buffalo, Uvalde, Newtown, El Paso, Parkland, Charleston, Las Vegas, Orlando. I've been to almost every one of those places to meet with those parents. We all got to do it. We're going to do it for all our kids. Gunned down on our streets every single day, every day that never make the national news. Folks, we're going to do it for your kids who are learning how to read and write in school instead of learning how to duck and cover. So this November, we have to ask every candidate, are you for banning assault weapons or not? And if you're not, we're not going to vote for you. Period. In my State of the Union address, I put forward a unity agenda that included taking care of our veterans. Especially our veterans who've been exposed to burn pits like my son, who got the Conspicuous Service Medal, as well as, I don't want to start talking about my son, but he spent a year in Iraq. He was only about 200 yards from one of the burn pits. These pits the size of football fields, 8, 9, or 10 feet deep in Afghanistan and Iraq. Incinerated, that incinerates wastes of war, tires, poisonous chemicals, jet fuels, and so much more. So much more. Our soldiers breathed in that toxic smoke and came home with headaches, numbness, dizziness, cancer. I just signed into law the PAC Act to take care of those veterans who were exposed to those burn pits. It's the least we could do for them. I believe a nation has many obligations, but only one truly sacred obligation: to equip the women and men we send to battle and take care of them and their families when they return home. Army Captain Wes Moore understands that. He saw it like my son saw it. We've done all this, but then our critics say inflation. You mean the global inflation caused by the worldwide pandemic and Putin's war in Ukraine? We're making progress. Since I took office this year, gas prices are down more than $1 this summer, and we're going to keep it going down. I just signed into law the historic Inflation Reduction Act, and it wasn't easy. We had to take on the big drug companies to pass this bill, and we did. For decades, Big Pharma fought to block giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices. And for decades, Big Pharma won. But not this year. The American people won, and Big Pharma lost. Medicare now has the power to negotiate for lower prescription drug prices. Seniors will see their out-of-pocket costs for drugs limited to no more than $2,000 a year, no matter how many drugs they need to take for cancer or other diseases. Limit. If you're on Medicare and have diabetes, your cost of insulin will be capped at $35 a month. We also included a provision that would have allowed anyone with diabetes, including those kids and their families, that should get charged somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a month. How would you feel like being a parent, looking at your kid and knowing you didn't have the insurance, and knowing if they did not get that insulin, they may die? There's thousands of people in America going through that. And these Republicans ripped that out of the bill, but we're coming back. Look, this law also keeps down the cost of health care. Thanks to the American Rescue Plan and this new law, we're saving families of four an average of $2,400 a year on their health care premiums. They're big savings for someone making $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year as a family. It's a big deal. Some might even say it's a BFD. We also had to take on the climate deniers. And guess what? We beat them. We beat them. For decades, these climate deniers blocked any meaningful progress in dealing with climate crisis. But not this year. This year, the American people won and the climate deniers lost. And consequently, we're taking the most aggressive action to confront climate crisis ever. $368 billion. We created more than 1 million jobs. And it will help us triple our solar power, unleash American manufacturing to own the global market in electric cars. That's the future, made in America. For decades, the biggest corporations and the wealthiest Americans who fought to block a fair tax code. And for decade after decade, they won. That's why 55 of the largest Fortune 500 companies in America in 2020 paid zero in tax after making $40 billion. No, I'm not making this up. It's the God's truth. $40 billion. But this year, some of the biggest companies in America flooded Capitol Hill with lobbyists and money and campaign contributions. And they lost. The American people won. Now, corporations have to pay a minimum corporate tax, God love them, of 15%. Isn't that painful? The days of billion-dollar companies paying zero are over. And guess what? You hear Republicans always talk about the deficit, right? About big spending Democrats. Well, guess what? When the last guy was president, he increased the debt by $2 trillion in tax cuts. Not a penny of it paid for, okay? Well, guess what we did? We reduced the deficit. The Inflation Reduction Act lowers the deficit by $300 billion over the next 10 years. And that's on top of the $350 billion I reduced the deficit last year and the $1.5 trillion reducing it this year. You'd think if the Republicans really cared about reducing inflation, they would have voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. But every single Republican voted against it, even though I know at least a dozen of them thought they should vote for it. but they would be primaried. Every single Republican in the House, every single Republican in the Senate, every single one, hear this, America, every single Republican voted against lower prescription drug prices, against lower health care costs, against tackling the climate crisis, against lower energy costs, against creating good paying jobs, against the fair taxes, every single one. That's not hyperbole. Every single American needs to return the favor when we vote. And thanks to our historic deficit reduction, we can afford to cancel $10,000 in student debt and $20,000 if you're on a Pell Grant for tens of millions of Americans making under $125. This is a game changer. Look, every election is a choice. My dad used to have a saying. He said, Joey, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative. Well, the alternative to the Democrats are the MAGA Republicans. Wes knows all about MAGA Republicans. He's running against one of them. That's why Wes described him as so far outside the mainstream that it'll be dangerous in the governor's office. Well, you're absolutely right. And your current Republican governor, your Republican governor agrees with that. Just go check out what your Republican governor said about Wes's opponent. So how extreme are these MAGA Republicans? Just take a look what happened since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. In red states after red state, there's a race to pass the most restrictive abortion limitations imaginable, even without exception for rape or incest. But these MAGA Republicans won't stop there. They want a national ban. They want to pass a legislative national ban in the Congress. If the MAGA Republicans win control of the Congress, it won't matter where you live. Women won't have the right to choose anywhere. Anywhere. Let me tell you something. If they take it back and they try it and pass it, I will veto it. Next. We're going to go all right. And by the way, as Clarence Thomas said in the opinion, he said that the right to privacy doesn't exist for the right to use contraception, marriage equality, the whole right to privacy. We can't let that happen. You got it, kid. You can't let that happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. And I don't believe we will. The MAGA Republicans have awakened to the powerful force in America, the women of this nation. The court, in its opinion, used the phrase that women have a right to vote and change this. Well, guess what? MAGA Republicans don't have a clue about the power of women. Let me tell you something. They are about to find out. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And by the way, look, I served in the Congress since I was 29 years old. I had to wait 17 days to be eligible to be sworn in. I've served with a lot of great Republicans, I mean it. A lot of great Thank you, man. Thank you, man. You got it. Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal. What's happened is there are not many real Republicans anymore. By the way, your sitting governor, he's a Republican you can deal with. We disagree. No, I'm serious. But at least he's within the mainstream of the Republican Party. I respect conservative Republicans. I don't respect these MAGA Republicans. And folks, everybody thinks I'm exaggerating when I say this, but they're coming after your Social Security as well. And if you think I'm kidding, go read the only election year plan the Republicans have put out. Look up on these. There you go. This is the Republican plan that is about what they want to do with regard to Social Security. Go ahead to the next slide. There you go. Here's what they said. Rick Scott, the Republican chairman of the Re-elect Committee for the Senate, Republican senators, said Social Security and Medicare should be in the chopping block. This is what they put out. All federal legislation sunsets every 5 years. If a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. Translated, your Social Security every 5 years will be eliminated unless it's voted back into existence. It's your money. You paid for it. You paid for it. But I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about what they're doing. And it's all there in black and white. He wants to require Congress to vote on the future of Social Security every 5 years. So, every 5 years, Congress can vote to change, cut, reduce, or entirely eliminate Social Security. How does that make you feel? Do you want to put your Social Security in the hands of Ted Cruz and Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean it. But it's not just Social Security. Senator Scott wants everything in the federal budget voted on de novo every 5 years it goes out of existence. That includes Medicare, veterans benefits, and everything else. And then along comes Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. This is what they put this in writing now. This is their plan. He thinks 5 years is too long. I'm not joking. You think I'm making this up? He wants to put Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block every single year. This is the same guy who said, if Republicans get control of the United States Congress, they're coming after the Affordable Care Act again, denying health insurance to anyone with a pre-existing condition. Because if you don't have Affordable Care Act, people with a pre-existing cannot get insurance. Again, just think of it as a parent or a brother or sister looking at a brother, sister, son, daughter, and you can't take care of them because they have a pre-existing condition. These guys never stop. And we're never going to stop either. Look, my friends, we offer a starkly different version and vision of this country, a vision of a better America that's within our reach, that's within our hands, if we just vote. If we elect 2 more senators, we keep the House and Democrats, we're going to get a lot of unfinished business we're going to get done. Folks, look, we'll codify Roe v. Wade. We'll ban assault weapons. We'll protect Social Security and Medicare. We'll pass universal pre-K. We'll restore the child care tax credit. We'll protect voting rights. We'll pass election reform and make sure no one ever has the opportunity to steal an election again. And we'll continue to build an economy where everyone gets a fair shot. An economy built from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. An economy that rewards work, not wealth. Finally stops billionaires who pay an average of 8% federal tax. Less tax than a teacher or a firefighter. I think they should be able to be a billionaire, but pay your fair share, damn it. Because we understand something MAGA Republicans don't. Wall Street did not build this country, you did. Working people, middle class built this nation, and unions built the middle class. And we're not going to let anyone or anything tear America apart. I'll close with this. We're at a serious moment in our nation's history. The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence. They don't believe in democracy. This is why in this moment, those of you who love this country, Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving America than the MAGA Republicans are destroying America. We the people are the first words of our Constitution. And we the people will still determine the destiny of America. If we the people stand together, we will prevail as we the people. We just have to keep the faith. We just have to persevere. We just have to vote. Vote. Folks, we just have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. So let's get it done. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. Okay, so today the President will sign an executive order to implement the semiconductor funding in the CHIPS and Science Act. This bipartisan law will lower the cost of goods, creating high-paying manufacturing jobs around the country, and ensure we make more critical technologies at home. Specifically, this EO lays out the key priorities for implementation. It will also establish an interagency council to coordinate implementation of the law. This council will be co-chaired by NEC Director Brian Deese, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and the Acting Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, Olandra Nelson. And today, the Department of Commerce launched chips.gov. It's live now. You should go check it out, which is a one-stop shop for funding opportunities, timelines, application, requirements, and so much more. With that, see, just one topper today. Go ahead, Amr.
So back on student loans, I wanted to ask you, Congressman Tim Ryan and Senator Bennett were among Democrats that have made the point that the administration should have further targeted the student relief and proposed a way to pay for the plan. What does the administration say to, particularly like Congressman Ryan's point that waiving debt for those already on a trajectory to financial security sends the wrong message to Americans? And I was also hoping you could talk to us, give us perhaps a little bit of color, to what extent were consultations made with particularly Democrats who had some misgivings and wanted to see this more fixed towards lower income Americans?
So just a couple of things, because you asked me a bunch of things there, Amr. So first of all, this was a campaign promise that the president made, as we all know, during the campaign back in 2020, and he had wanted to make sure that he gives that little bit of breathing room to Americans who really need it. And this was targeted. This was targeted for Americans who are making less than $125,000. It gives that $10,000 debt relief. And if there are, and it has that Pell Grant provision in there, as we've talked about. You heard from Ambassador Susan Rice, and you guys have all read, I'm sure, the fact sheets. And when you look at the Pell Grant provision and you add that piece to it, that adds another, that could go up to $20,000, right? And so that's incredibly targeted. That's really important. Those borrowers who are on Pell Grant, let's think about this, right? Some of us in here probably had gotten Pell Grant. I had to get a Pell Grant when I went to college. And those are families that are $60,000 households, and that's nearly $60,000 per household. And if you look at it by half, that's 30. Part of that tranche is $30,000 people per household, and so that's incredibly targeted and will go very far and will be a big deal. Look, we understand, the president understands, and he said this yesterday, it's not going to please everybody. He understands that the policy is not. What he is trying to do is make sure that, again, we're giving families a little breathing room. And just to give you a few quotes, because there has been a broad range of groups and advocates, from teachers unions to labor groups to racial justice advocates, who have applauded the president's announcements. If you think about the United Auto Workers, President Biden once again showed that his administration stands with working families over special interests. That's what we're talking about. American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, this is AFSCME. Today's historic actions puts money back into working people's pockets and frees thousands of families from crippling debt. That's what we're talking about. American Federation of Teachers, AFT, you all know them. This administration's decisions have been a game changer. And lastly, Representative Clyburn, this will help free borrowers, especially borrowers of color, from the crushing burden of student loan debt, and help make higher education accessible, affordable to all. And to your other part of your question about who we spoke to, we are constantly in conversations on all these types of big issues, big announcement, whether it's legislation, whether it's executive action that we take with Congress, with groups, and people who are really going to be affected by this. That is important to the president. And the way that we see this is a smart, fiscally balanced approach to deal with an issue that does indeed cripple families.
And it's just on one other topic. President spoke with President Zelensky today. I think there's a readout that I've seen. But I was wondering, there's also the situation with the nuclear power plant where the facility is reportedly now been cut off from the electrical grid. Was that discussed during today's call? And I guess, what is the administration going to do to try to safeguard the situation so that the situation doesn't turn into a disaster?
We'll have a readout to all of you shortly. Let me just give you a couple of lines here. So the president reiterated the United States support for Ukraine as they defend themselves from Russian aggression, including yesterday's announcements of nearly $3 billion in weapons and equipment. He congratulated Ukraine as it marked a particularly significant Independence Day this week, and shared his admiration for the people of Ukraine and its armed forces as they continue to inspire the world with their dedication and freedom. Again, we will have more of a more detailed readout to all of you as it relates to ZNPP. Look, a nuclear power plant, and I believe I said this yesterday, should never be an active war zone. And so we have said Russia should agree to demilitarize the zone around the plant and agree to allow an international Atomic Energy Agency visit as soon as possible to check on the safety and security of the systems. This is something that did come up in the conversation, but I don't want to get ahead of the readout, and I'll let NSC put that out momentarily. Okay.
Thanks so much. A few more questions just on the student loan debt forgiveness. You guys yesterday confirmed that the form that millions of borrowers are going to need to essentially apply for this, it to show they're eligible, is not yet ready.
Yeah.
We saw overnight that studentaid.gov was having some serious delays. Did the administration roll this out before it was ready?
No, not at all. Look, we have said for a very long time, for some time now, you've heard from the president directly, that we would have a decision by August 31st. This is something that you all have been asking about, talking with us at this podium, or, when we have conversations with you outside of the briefing room, that this is something that he wanted to really take his time, figure out the ways to do this. Remember, we talked about having the legal authority, which that went through. You guys can go to the Department of Justice. It lays out the legal review that was done on this. And so this is, again, incredibly important. We will continue to tell people to go to the website, or you can go to wh.gov. There's a banner there. People can just click, and you can actually give your email and get those updates. There will be some folks, I think there's about 8 million people who we have their information, or the Department of Education has their information, and so it would be automatic. And some folks will have to actually go and figure out how this process works, and they can go to the website.
But for everyone else besides those 8 million, if they have to wait for these forms and they have to apply and they have to hear back, can you guarantee that everyone who qualifies will see their balance shrink before repayments start being due next year?
Look, this is something that we want to make sure it happens right away. I don't have a timeline for you. That is something that the Department of Education is going to work on, in a way that's hopefully as they can, in a fast way. But look, that is something, again, that the Department of Education is going to focus on. It is important. We want this to happen for these individuals. But again, the pause is going to be lifted at the end of December 31st, right? At the end of December. So we want to make sure that it is done in tangent. And so that's what the Department of Education is going to be focused on.
I can just ask kind of the more political question too, following up, my colleague quoted Tim Ryan in Ohio. What a lot of the Democrats have in common, those who've been pushing back and sort of distancing themselves from this announcement, what they have in common is that they're pretty vulnerable politically, or they're in tough political races. Are you guys worried that you might have put more vulnerable Democrats in a tough spot, that you could have risked some of these races in November?
So, as you know, I can't get into politics from here, so I have to be very, very careful. I do want to talk through some polling. So if you look at the targeted student loan forgiveness, that the announcement that you heard from the Department of Education and the president, it's popular amongst American people. 3 recent polls show that the president's proposal, the $10,000 forgiven, is supported by a majority of Americans. A couple of polls. The Morning Consult political poll in June among 2,006 registered voters found 51% support for giving $10,000. NPR, a survey of 1,022 adults conducted last month, found 55% of respondents back the cancellation of up to $10,000. The Economist YouGov survey of 1,500 adults in July found 51% of Americans are in favor of that threshold. So the majority of Americans approve of this targeted approach that you heard from this administration, and I think that matters. Again, I'm not going to get into politics and to what is the next several weeks are going to look like as the elections play out, but I can speak to the popularity of what we did, the importance of what we did, how this is going to help struggling families, and that has always been the plan of this president, especially as we look at the economy and making sure that we do not leave anybody behind. Go ahead, Steve. And I'll come around, folks. Go ahead, Steve.
Do you have a better sense of how much the plan will cost?
So, Ambassador, I want to make sure I give her the right title. Ambassador Rice spoke to this yesterday. I know this question was asked of her. And so just a couple of things before I get to that piece. The president's record on fiscal responsibility is second to none. And last year alone, you've heard us talk about this because this is incredibly important. He achieved $350 billion in deficit reduction, and this year it's projected by the end of the fiscal year to be at $1.7 trillion deficit reduction. This is historic. What we're talking about here is historic numbers because of the work that this president has done when it comes to the economy. And the previous administration added added debt every year of his administration, and one of the things that we continue to do is make sure that we bring down the debt. If you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, is projected to decrease the deficit by hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 2 decades, even after taking this action. So that is also important to note as well. Look, but just to reiterate what my colleague said yesterday, the domestic policy advisor, it will also, all of this, as when it comes to costs, will also depend on how many of the loans canceled were actually expected to be repaid. It will depend on how many borrowers actually take up this opportunity before we have a real sense. But again, we have a deficit reduction that is historic, and we also know this last piece here is that independent experts like Goldman Sachs agree that the president's plan will not have any meaningful impact on inflation. In fact, Goldman Sachs and others estimate that it will reduce inflation. So that's just one more thing that I wanted to add because I know that's been a question that others have had.
Are you expecting the president to bring this up in his speech tonight? What should we expect from that speech?
So the speech, I have a little bit of a preview for all of you. We knew you would want to ask, and as you know, got to be careful of what I say. So tonight, the president will lay out the choice before Americans. He'll highlight how he and congressional Democrats have delivered results for working families, creating nearly 10 million jobs and record low unemployment, lowering health care costs and energy costs, passing a new gun safety law, which we hadn't seen in decades. He'll say that they have taken on special interest and won. That's what Democrats have done. This is what you have seen these past several weeks in particular. And he'll say what they are still fighting for is protecting a woman's right to choose, not a national ban on abortion, which we have seen from the other side, the safety of kids in school, not protecting the NRA, as we've seen from the Republicans, and the right to vote and have that vote counted, which is so incredibly important as we talk about our democracy. The president will contrast that with congressional Republicans and their extreme MAGA agenda, taking away our rights, defending the super rich and corporations, and putting Social Security and Medicare on the chopping blocks. That is the plan that they have put forward. And as you know, he always quotes his dad, "Don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative." The alternative to congressional Democrats and President Biden is MAGA Republicans. So that is what you're going to hear from him this evening, and we'll see you there. Go ahead.
It seems inevitable at this point. Is the administration prepared for potential legal challenges to the legal basis for the student loan?
So as you heard from the ambassador yesterday, she talked about this specifically because she was asked, and we saw our legal authority through the HEROES Act. That is the legal authority that we are using in order to move forward with this. Just a couple of things here is that the Department of Education and the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel have published, and this is what I was just talking about before, detailed opinions explaining the legal basis, that legal review for canceling student debt. That was one of the things that we took very seriously. We had mentioned this the past year almost. And again, the Secretary of Education has broad authority under the HEROES Act to take this action.
What I understand that you guys believe you have a legal basis for it, that's why you did it, but are you prepared for the legal challenge?
I mean, look, I can't get into like any hypotheticals here. What we know and what we have done is taken a look of our legal authority and how we can make this happen, and we went with the HEROES Act, and we feel pretty confident about that. But I just don't want to get into hypotheticals on that at this time.
Okay, and then one more, because I think the president's going to bring it up tonight. But the president directed the HHS secretary to take 30 days and come back with a review on a series of issues in executive order. I think it was in early July. Did that review come back, and Kind of where do you stand
I
on
think
that?
MJ asked me this question a couple weeks ago. I'm going to have to go back to our team just to be sure. I haven't done that yet, and so tomorrow hopefully I'll have an update, or we can talk after this. But I know that you all asked this question before, so I haven't forgotten. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. If I could go back to something my Fox colleague asked yesterday, and that's about the who pays for this. Mm-hmm. So I did a search last night for the phrase "fully paid for," mm-hmm. coming from that podium and from in President Biden's speeches during the last year and a half. I found scores of them. I promise I won't read them all, but just a couple. You quoted experts saying that the package referencing the IRA would, quote, quickly and noticeably bring down healthcare costs for families, would be more than fully paid for. Mm-hmm. Jen Psaki talked about on February 2nd, he's committed to sustainable and responsible policy and ensuring that our long-term investments are fully paid for, like Build Back Better. Mm-hmm. Brian Deese talked about packages that would be fully paid for across time. The president, in multiple speeches, talked about this bill. This is in December, referring to the BBB, is paid fully paid for. It won't increase the deficit. Anyway, the question is, yeah. do you all believe that this student loan program is fully paid for? And if it's not, why does the president think it was important to have all of his other spending priorities fully paid for to be fiscally responsible, but not this one? So we do,
so this, again, this is the question that my colleague here, Ambassador, got. So we have to get a better sense, right, of what we're talking about as far as cost. Wait, let me just say that out loud. She is the domestic policy advisor, and when she was asked that question, so I just want to iterate what she said. But we do believe it will be fully paid for because of the work that this president has done with the economy, because of what you just said. Well, what I just said is what we have done to bring down the deficit reduction. That matters, and the work that we'll continue to do. Look, when you look at IRA, it is also that $300 billion deficit is going to matter, right? When you think about that 1.7 trillion by the end of this fiscal year is going to matter as well. And also, here's the thing: when we talk about the pause being lifted, that's going to bring $50 billion per year back into the Treasury, right? That was actually not happening throughout almost for 2 years now. So that's going to be coming back at the same time that basically people are getting these benefits from this plan.
Just to clarify, though, the previous, whether it was the Build Back Better proposals or IRA or the infrastructure bills, those were, in the words of the administration anyway, fully paid for internally.
Yeah.
You're saying that this one, because of the benefits that of deficit reduction, you're okay raising or lessening that deficit reduction with this proposal because of the work that's been done in the past. Because this one doesn't have any pay-fors, right?
I mean,
there are no mechanisms that internally to this that would raise money at the same time that it's
here's what I would say. I mean, the question was asked to me earlier about how there's some Democrats who are not happy with this, and so because they either wanted more or they didn't want it at all, right? And what the president did, that step that he took, was to do this in a fiscally responsible way. This is what we believe. This is why it took us this time to do the legal review, to look at the process. This is why we didn't do the 50,000. We did up to 20,000. This is why my colleagues here at the podium said, well, let's see who actually takes advantage of this. Then we'll have a better sense of what this is actually going to cost. But when you think about the $50 billion that goes back into the Treasury, when you think about the lowering the deficit that we have, which is historic, the 1.7 trillion, the 350 billion the first year of the president's administration, that matters. And it is, it is one of those things that, always welcome this conversation, but what we have done is fiscally responsible. What the last administration did was not. It just was not. And what they did with cutting taxes for the wealthy, they 85% of folks making it went to 85% of folks who were making more than $75,000 a year. We're actually doing the opposite. And it should matter that this president is trying to give some breathing room for people who've been literally crippled by this by this pandemic, by what has happened the last couple of years. And so again, the way we see it is we've done it in a fiscal balanced, responsible way. We will see who takes advantage of this, but this is going to help 43 million people. And just think about it, if people are saving a little bit of money, right, they are going to go buy that house. They're going to start a family. This matters in so many ways.
So that matters more than keeping the deficit lower by including something that would offset whatever the cost might be.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't believe that it's going to increase the deficit, because what we're saying that is the 1.7 trillion, right? We've done the work, right, to lower the deficit. Also, $50 billion per year is going to go back.
But that $50 billion was already. I mean, it's already was
there. Yeah, but we were getting we were getting zero. The Treasury was getting zero for the last 2 years.
But they still owed that money.
I know, I understand that. I get what you're saying, but there's also an argument that I'm making as well, is that we're putting money back into the Treasury, which matters as well. That is going to happen.
A judgment on which is better or not. I'm just trying to understand. I think as some of my colleagues are.
Yeah.
If what you guys are saying here is basically the president has made a determination that helping people with their debt is important enough, and in your words, matters enough to spend what could be, estimates of $300, $400, $500 billion, or, without explicitly saying where that money is coming from, and that will, obviously, and that you're willing to use the deficit savings that you have claimed to do that. And I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
No, and I'm trying to explain to you how it will offset, how all of this would be offset once the pause is lifted, and also once this process with the student loan is also done. So there is a process here, right, that is, we believe is going to offset that. Right? Okay. I know. All right. All right. Well, I'm glad that I've exhausted you, Michael. That is rare to exhaust you. I know. Usually you don't get exhausted. All right. Go ahead, Peter.
If I could ask you, just following up, I have some follow-ups on one quick one on that. We heard from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget today. You guys can't estimate what it'll cost. You want to see how many people take you up on it. But they estimate cancellation will eliminate about $550 billion in federal student loan debt. They say, however, we project that the overall amount of outstanding federal student loan debt will return to $1.6 trillion, its current level, within 5 years. So is the president committed to doing this again, or is this just a one-time deal?
You're asking me about a hypothetical that I don't.
Well, I guess I'm asking. Let's not be so specific if that's a hypothetical. They say, this nonpartisan organization says, it's just going to go back up again. So is the president okay with this just being like a temporary relief thing, and then it's okay, and taxpayers will
I mean,
pay
it is a little bit of a hypothetical. You started off asking me the question that we don't know what the number is, which we don't. We have to see what in order to for me to fully answer that question.
Does the White House believe that it will not go up again, that the federal student loan debt will not go up again, and that the ideas that the ambassador yesterday presented will stop the rising cost of college, and that debt will not continue to rise?
So look, when we talk about the rising cost of college, and I know this question, and you're talking about tuition. So look, we have taken steps on colleges raising tuition. This is something that the Department of Education, Secretary Cardona, takes very seriously. He's been closely watching, and he's going to hold colleges accountable for raising costs without delivering additional value. So, so a couple of things those measures that we have taken, because I think this is important as you're asking me this question for Americans to hear. We reinstated an enforcement office at the Department of Education. We terminated a college accreditor that had previously followed colleges and that defrauded borrowers to get access to federal student loans, and we're rolling out new resources to help students make more informed decision on which schools will better deliver. So these are steps that he has taken. We will monitor, we will crack down on anybody who is acting in this way, that is defrauding students. That is something that you heard from Ambassador Rice herself. And then we have taken other steps, right? We have taken other steps through the American Rescue Plan to provide $40 billion for colleges and universities to support students, particularly at community colleges and minority institutions. And another thing that we've done is ask for Pell Grants to be doubled and a lot more. So we're going to try to do our best to keep those costs lower as we talk about tuition. But if we're going to do more, and we just have to see what that number looks like.
Understood. I'll let others litigate that. Let me move on to the topic I wanted to ask you about, which is the event that's taking place tonight. I know there's only so much you can say as it relates to politics, but just as the White House controls its schedule, how often should we expect to see the president going forward on the campaign trail, this being the sort of first formal pre-midterm event? And separately, what do you say to those candidates who don't want to campaign with him given his low approval ratings or low popularity perhaps in some states? Tim Ryan in Ohio said, we haven't asked President Biden to come, we have no expectation or no plans to ask him to campaign. Michael Bennet in Colorado wouldn't even comment on it.
So I'll say this, look, Democrats, as we know, has a lot to talk about. They have delivered for the American people, and especially as we've seen the last couple of weeks. Again, the Inflation Reduction Act. You think about the burn pits that's going to expand services for veterans who have put their lives on the line for our nation, which is incredibly important. You think about the CHIPS Act. We just talked about what an executive order that the president signed to really make sure that gets implemented in a responsible way, and also the CHIPS.gov went live. We have a list of things. Let's not forget the bipartisan infrastructure law, all historic pieces of legislation that we are going to go out there and make sure that the American people are aware. We put out a memo, as you all know, a couple weeks ago talking about that particular specific thing. I can't get into politics from here, as you know very well,
but
Peter.
It's not politics.
Well, no, you asked me. You know,
control his schedule.
No, but you asked me. But you specifically asked me how much is he going to get out there to campaign. I can't.
But the White House does control his schedule.
Wait.
Now?
I'm about to answer. I'm just saying that with a preface that I need to be careful on what I say. Look, the president loves to go out there and meet with the American people. He wants to be out there and travel as much as possible. He has something that he wants to say and deliver and let the American people know that we have done, right? And so, yeah, will you see the president out there? Yes, you will see the president travel. That is something he wants to do. That is something we all want to see him do as well, get out there. I cannot talk specific about how that's about the campaign. I cannot do that from here.
But to those candidates who don't want him to be with them?
Again, we have something, Democrats, especially the work that congressional Democrats have been.
Does the president just accept that and says it's part of the deal?
Look, the president appreciates working with a lot of some of the members. Some of them are elected officials in their own state. He has good relationships with them. He talks to some of them really regularly. And you'll hear a lot more from the president tonight. I just want to be really careful, Peter. So as you know, we are trying to be respectful of the Hatch Act here. But again, we believe that Democrats have a lot to sell. We have done a lot to deliver for the American people. And we are happy to contrast what we have done against our congressional Republicans. And that's what you're going to hear from the president. Okay. Good. I'll come to the back.
Thanks, Karine. Just really quick on student loans.
Yeah.
Does the president expect or does he want the education department to hire additional staff to handle what could be millions of applications that are already struggling to handle the existing student loan programs that they have?
No, that's a very good question. I've not talked to the president about that specifically. I do not know what is going to be coming in to the Department of Education. That is something that they will have to speak to about their own staff and what that looks like. Clearly, this is important for the president. He wants to make sure that we deliver these benefits to the we're anticipating 43 million people who will get some relief here. And so that is going to be up to Secretary Cardona. Clearly, we support the Department of Education doing everything that they can to make sure we get this done.
Does the administration expect a large number of people who aren't eligible, who are eligible for this program to not apply for it?
I mean, that's a hypothetical that I just don't know.
Yeah, it goes. To the question of why you can't estimate the cost, right?
We just, I mean, I am answering this in the most, we just don't, we are doing everything that we can. We have a specific website that you have heard many of my colleagues, whether on TV here, talk about that website and encourage people to get on the website to get the information that they need. They can go to whitehouse.gov, as I just said moments ago, to get the information that they need. So to see if they are actually eligible and what the process is going to be. I know it's going to take some time. The Department of Education has to do their work to get that information out, which they will. They know this is a priority. I mean, it is hard to say who's going to take us up on it and who's not. It is just hard to say. What we can do is provide the information and let people know that this exists.
But you could say this is how much it's going to cost if everyone who is eligible applies.
I mean, we just don't have a number to share at this time.
Why don't you?
Look, the secretary, the UN ambassador, the former UN ambassador spoke to this yesterday. We just have to see. It is a process that we just need to take a look before we can answer that question. We just don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
But I guess what I'm struggling with, and I think some of my colleagues have asked about, is
yeah, you asked the same question yesterday. This is nothing new, right? This is a summary. Oh, okay, but you picked up on what he was saying.
But
So
I was going to say, if you don't know how much it's going to cost, how can you guarantee that it's going to be paid for, even if you're defining paid for in a way that some of us have questions about?
look, I think what I can tell you is that we have done the work to make sure that this is done in a fiscal responsible way, in a balanced way. If you look at how we were able to do the deficit reduction in the past 2 years, almost 2 years, 350 billion in the first year, 1.7 trillion reduction that we will see at the end of this fiscal year, that matters as well. That matters by bringing down that deficit. It matters on how we can get this done for the American people. But let's not forget, the pause will be lifted, and that's going to matter as Treasury is going to get the revenues that they haven't been getting in some time. Again, we will, Susan Rice is the domestic policy advisor. I'm just going to reiterate what she said, and we'll actually know more once people take us up on it and get a sense if they will. But we know we do have what we do know, right? Which is what I just listed about the deficit reduction, which is important. This matters in this case. Okay, Nancy.
Thanks. Just on the Iran deal, I'm wondering if the U.S. is optimistic about the prospects for restarting that nuclear accord.
Say that last part.
Is the U.S. optimistic about restarting the nuclear accord, the Iran deal?
Yes. I thought you said something else.
Sorry.
Okay. It was hard to hear that last part. Look, we have taken a deliberate and principled approach to these negotiations from the beginning, from the start. If Iran is prepared to comply with its commitments under the 2015 deal, then we're prepared to do the same. The administration, along with our allies, is preparing equally for scenarios with and without a mutual return to full implementation of the JCPOA. The president will only conclude a deal that he determines is in the national security interest of the United States. So again, we have always said diplomacy is the way to get to a nuclear deal, back to JCPOA. And so we're just going to continue to have those conversations.
Just one follow-up on that. What did the administration say in its response to Iran and the European Union regarding the EU proposal to revive the 2015 nuclear agreement?
So as you know, we receive Iran's comments on the EU's proposed final text, and we're reviewing them now. We provided our response to the EU yesterday. The Department of State confirmed this yesterday as well. We're not going to negotiate in public. You hear us say this all the time. We're just going to continue to have those open lines of communication. Okay.
Thanks, Corinne.
I'm sorry, Jackie.
I was hoping, could you reflect,
and then I'll go to the back.
Could you reflect a little bit on the decision against the Idaho abortion law, particularly in light of the Texas ruling in the other direction? I mean, is there something that can be learned from this?
Look, we put out a statement not too long ago about the particular the Iowa decision. I talked about the Texas decision yesterday, which is the district court affirming that medical providers can deny life-saving and health-preserving care for women, even if they are suffering from hemorrhaging or life-threatening hypertension, which is what we saw about 24 hours and heard from the Texas district court. support. Look, you know, this is something, as you all were asking me about what the president is going to lean into, this is something that he will talk about, which is how Republican legislators are working to roll back the freedoms Americans have, you know, really depended on for nearly half a century. And it's more and more clear that it is against the will of the majority of Americans. And that's what you're seeing, right? That's what you're seeing even with the Idaho decision. That's what we saw with Kansas as well. It's like the majority of Americans are speaking, are making their voices clear, right? This is not what we saw, the decision that we saw on June 24th, the Dobbs decision, was not the majority rule, was not the voice.
That can be learned from the opposing rulings, I mean, contrary rule.
Well, I mean, I think it's basically what I just stated, right? Which is like majority of Americans have been very clear on this. You know, when it comes to that Dobbs decision that came from the Supreme Court on June 24th, it was not of the voice of the majority of Americans. And what we're going to see is women across the country are going to continue to make their voices heard to reclaim rights taken from them by the Supreme Court. President Biden and congressional Democrats are listening, and we're going to be committed to restoring the protections of Roe. And so that's what we're going to do. That is going to be our focus. But again, this is the majority of folks here in this country disagree. They disagree because this has been life-changing when you think about the Dobbs decision that was done just a couple months ago.
On the Zelensky call, if I may, the president just tweeted out about remaining committed to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I was curious if there was any conversation at all about faith in Zelensky himself, considering earlier reports of distrust. Did that come up? Did the president feel a need to give any assurance to Zelensky that he was behind him personally?
Yeah, I don't have the specific readout. As when I walked out, the readout hadn't come out yet. I gave you a couple of points of what was discussed, but the full readout will be out soon. Look, we've been asked this question before. We support Zelensky, the president, and his his fight for freedom. We are impressed, have been for the past 6 months, of what the Ukrainian people have been able to do, to be able to fight off an unprovoked war by the Kremlin. Again, we cannot forget this. This is, the Kremlin decided that they didn't want Ukraine to be a democracy, but it is a democracy. It is a sovereign country. And so we announced the $3 billion tranche yesterday. That shows our support for Ukraine. That shows our long-term support for Ukraine, and we're going to continue to support them as long as they need our help. Again, they are fighting for their democracy, and that matters. And we have been incredibly impressed by what they have been able to do, and we're going to continue to hold the Kremlin accountable. That's going to be our focus. No talk. I don't have any visit or any announcement of a face-to-face. As you know, the first lady was here recently of Ukraine, and both the president and the first lady, Dr. Biden, was honored to have her here for her visit. And so, as also you know, Secretary Blinken has visited Ukraine and met with his counterparts there. So we have had other clearly members of the administration go visit and talk to their counterparts in Ukraine. I'm gonna go to the back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Corinne. On a quick one on the event tonight, and also a question about the questions you can't answer about politics.
Sure.
So why a rally in Maryland? Is there anyone on the ballot in Maryland, Chris Van Hollen or anyone like that, who the president needs to spend his time trying to shore up going into November? And secondly, in the past administration, and I'm not saying that this was actually a good strategy or even one that was technically compliant with the Hatch Act, I'm not sure. In the past administration, when there were questions that would come up that were questions that could not be answered from the White House briefing room, the press secretary would literally leave the White House briefing room and go to some other building so that they weren't in a federal facility and they could get around the Hatch Act. So are you going to start having briefings other than here? Or
So you want to meet in some back alley somewhere to have this conversation, to talk politics? Is that what's happening? Well, yeah, James. Well, look, I don't know if I want to compare how we behave with the last administration. That is not something that I would want to be doing at all when it comes to the Hatch Act and being responsible and doing the right thing. But what I can do, right, is I could, you're going to hear from the president himself tonight. He will lay out clearly what his thoughts are. I'm certainly not going to get ahead of him. I gave a pretty good laydown of what I was able to say from here, of what he's going to talk about. It's going to be the contrast. It's going to be how Democrats have a different view of where they see the country going, which is making sure that we deliver for the middle class, making sure that we have an economy that goes from the bottom up and middle out. That is incredibly important for the president. That's why you've seen the work that he's done, the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is historic, the CHIPS Act, which I just talked about, the Inflation Reduction Act, and let's not forget the gun reform, which is something we hadn't seen in decades, and a lot of that is because of the work that this president has done. And I know one thing I just did is I just called out a few bipartisan pieces of legislation that were passed that we were able to do, and that is something that the president welcomes. But at the same time, as we're talking about inflation, as we're talking about the special interest, that is something that we have not seen Republicans step up to the plate, and they voted against Medicare being able to negotiate and lowering costs. They voted against standing up for voting rights, right, or not supporting voting rights. They have a plan that wants to put Medicare and Social Security on the chopping blocks. So that is what we're going to focus on. That is what we're going to continue to talk about, is what we have done in this 19 months for the American people. So I'm going to to you there in the back. Go ahead, Garen.
Thanks, Corinne. Sorry, another student had a question. But,
yeah, sure.
I've spoken to advocates who have expressed concern over what they worry could be a bureaucratic hurdle for minority communities. Based on the income verification and application process, they base this worry on patterns we've seen in minority communities as it relates to them not engaging in government programs because of the paperwork. And they worry that this could hinder access and participation for minority communities. Is the administration concerned that communities that need this relief the most won't get it because of this bureaucratic hurdle?
Well, that's always a concern, right? You bring up, Garen, a very, very good point. And the Secretary has been very, very clear. Secretary Cardona, the Secretary of the Department of Education, has said he's going to do everything that he possibly can to make this as simple as possible so that it doesn't become a bureaucratic headache. That is not something that the president wants. He wants to make sure that the 43 million people that this could potentially help actually get these benefits. It's important, it's critical, especially as we're also going to lift the pause in just a couple of months. We understand what that's going to mean. You got to remember, we're coming out of a time with this pandemic, as you know, that's really hurt people of color, low-income communities. What the pandemic has done with the economy. That's why the president has done all the work that he's done to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. And this is part of that. Again, the secretary is committed, the president is committed to make sure that the American people are able to access these benefits. Go ahead, Jen. I know. And then I'll come back again. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to ask about the legal basis for canceling student debt. The HEROES Act hinges on student debt cancellation being tied to the pandemic and that being a national emergency. But the administration argued in court that the pandemic is over at the southern border to lift Title 42. It's so over that the government's going to stop buying vaccines in the fall and shift to the private sector. So how is this a national emergency? How's COVID a national emergency when it comes to student debt?
So it's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Look, we use the HEROES Act because there are going to be some people, when we lift the pause, that's still going to suffer. They're still going to have a little bit of a hard time. And so that's one of the reasons that we made this decision, because as we're lifting up the pause, yes, some folks having not to pay for 2 years has been helpful to them, and we're able to save, and are probably going to be able to pay those monthly payments. But there's going to be some folks who are going to have a hard time. Because they're just in a different bracket, right? Because they've probably had a hard time before. We have to remember, this is a system. So he announced the pause, lifting up the pause. He announced the $10,000 and up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients who, as I said, many of them have a household nearly making $60,000, and half of the Pell Grant recipients are $30,000 a year household. And so the other piece of that is a reform, right? Reforming the system as well, so we can help nurses, so we can help construction workers, so we can help firefighters, and making sure that their payment are cut in half as well. Because these are some of our first respondents, right, who also suffered so much from the past 2 years. So he wanted to make sure he gave them a little bit of relief, understanding that some folks are just going to have a little bit of a harder time, even though we're coming out of a pandemic and the economy has been turned back on because of the work that this president has done.
That was another thing I was going to mention. I mean, the president often says that we're not in a recession because we've got, record job market, record low unemployment, businesses investing in America at record rates. So why are those appropriate conditions to forgive student debt?
Well, thank you for laying out all the work that the president has done. That is 1,000% correct. But we've also said that we know that some people are still suffering. You've heard us say that too. Yes, the economy can be turned back on, and we've created, to what you've just laid out, nearly 10 million new jobs since the president took office. That matters. The economy is stronger than it's been in some time. And we have said that, you've heard the president say that, there's still some folks who need a little bit more help. And this is what the president is trying to do. Both can be true. It's not one or the other.
Well, the Washington Post editorial board says that
and then I'm going to go to the back because we're running out of time.
Doesn't help those people, though. That it takes money from the broader tax base, mostly made up of workers who didn't go to college, to subsidize education debt of people with valuable degrees. So sort of rebutting what you had just said. But beyond that, there are critics who are saying that this is not about the pandemic, it's not about those conditions, that this is about getting people to vote ahead of the midterms, and that the real national emergency is Democrats in the midterm elections.
Well, I mean, I disagree with everything that you just laid out. I was just asked a question by some Democrats who are saying that they're not happy with this, right? Who are criticizing this. And we have said we're not going to make everybody happy. And so if you're not making everybody happy, you cannot say that, that what you just laid out certainly cannot be the case either. Look, here's what I will say, and this is just what we have laid out about this program. This is historical, what we're doing. It has never been done before. When you look at the system is broken. And we're trying to reform it so that we can help people who really need it. The way that this president has done this, he's done it in a targeted way, so it helps. It doesn't give a penny to anybody making more than 120. Let me finish. More than 125,000. And if you look at the Pell Grant recipients, we're talking about people again, and I've said this multiple times in this briefing room today, and we said it multiple times yesterday. $60,000 household. We're talking about $60,000 household. And cut in half, right? There are people we're talking about people, Pell Grant recipients that are at $30,000 households. I mean, that's the people that we are going to help. Again, nurses, construction workers, when you think about the reform. I mean, we've just gone back. You've made your point. I've made my point. I'm going to move on because we are actually running out of time. Go ahead, way in the back. Go ahead. No, way in the back. Owen. And then next to Owen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Karine. Thank you. I want to take your attention to Nicaragua, if you would, please. Daniel Ortega's regime just abducted a Catholic bishop, throwing priests and seminarians in prison. They're shutting down Catholic media outlets. I'm sure the White House is aware of this, the latest persecution of Catholics there in Nicaragua. What's the White House response to these latest developments?
Okay. So there has been a dramatic deterioration of respect for democratic principles and human rights by the regime in Nicaragua, including the imprisonment of democratic leaders, members of the political opposition, students, and journalists. The Biden-Harris administration finds this unacceptable and condemns these actions. The United States and members of the international community have already taken a number of actions to promote accountability for the regime's actions and will continue to do so. I'm just going to move around because, go ahead, next to Owen.
Student loans, you said that the administration is working to crack down on colleges for increasing costs as high as they have been. So specifically looking at how you guys are working with state and local governments to lessen the burden for future students, for the next generation.
Mm-hmm. So the actions the president announced yesterday benefits borrowers, including future borrowers, by cutting monthly payments in half. This is the reform that I was talking about just a moment ago, and that's important, right? When we're talking about, I had some examples here that I can use in a second. But when we're talking about construction workers, right? When we're talking about nurses, we actually had this in our fact sheets that was really important as well. So if you think about construction workers in particular, who is making $38,000 a year, and this is going to be for future folks as well. A year with a construction management credential would pay only $31 a month compared to the $147 they would pay now. That's an annual savings of nearly $1,400. This is because we are reforming the income-driven repayment. That's why we're able to do that. Go from 10% down to 5%. A single public school teacher making $44,000 a year would pay only $56 a month on their loans compared to the $197 they pay now. That would mean an annual savings of nearly $1,700. A nurse making $77,000 a year who is married with 2 kids would pay only 61% a month compared to the $295 they pay now. That's an annual savings of more than $2,800. This is what we're talking about, reforming a system that's broken for people who are really truly needed. This is why we said we did this in a targeted way, and a current or future borrowers making roughly the equivalent of $15 minimum wage won't have to make any payments at all. So this is what we're talking about, and this is why this is so important, again, to give people a little bit more of a breathing room. And I'm going to go to you, Joey. I don't want to miss you.
Governments on this to
Well, the Secretary of Education and his team certainly will be to do that, and have been when we're talking about cracking down. I think that was originally your question. And so this is clearly something that the Department of Education is focused on. Go ahead, Joey.
Will the administration eventually release a cost estimate on the student loan forgiveness plan? In other words, you don't have one yet, but moving down the road will
Yeah, I mean, that is something that the Department of Education is going to lead because this is something that this is an action that clearly was taken by the Department of Education. I don't have any more to speak on to that, just kind of relay back to what the ambassador said yesterday.
And then secondly, what was giving President Biden hesitance about doing this program earlier, or the student loan forgiveness earlier this year? In other words, he dragged out this decision for a long time. Was he concerned about inflation? Was he, why didn't he make this call back in April?
Well, he wanted to do it in a fiscally balanced way, and there was that legal review. I remember when you guys were asking us this question, we wanted to make sure the legal review was done. That is up on
So it's just a matter of getting the legal authority?
I think that's part of it, right? That's part of it, getting the legal authority. Another part of it is making sure that he listens to everybody. His economic team, right? He has conversations with congressional members. He has making sure that he hears from all the important voices as it comes to this issue. And so that is something that the president did. He made a campaign promise, and he wanted to stick to that campaign promise. Which he did, and he actually exceeded that promise because of those conversations that he was able to have.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm going to take two more. Matt, and then I'll go back one more. Yeah.
You said a couple of times that this is a fiscally responsible way of doing this. But can you explain a little bit about how you guys think it is fiscally responsible? Because you can't say how much it's going to cost. You can't say exactly how it's going to be paid for. And you can't say exactly who is paying for the cost. I get how you're arguing that it helps certain populations, but how is it fiscally responsible?
I mean, the way that we are talking about it and what we're trying to say is the actions that we have taken, and you see this with the way that the deficit has been reduced. We have taken just the last 19 months. I see that look that you're giving me there.
I hear the argument that you have taken previous fiscally responsible actions that give you more wiggle room to be
Right, it gives us, no. We see this, we do not see this as irresponsible. We see this as a fiscally responsible, balanced approach to doing this. Now remember, people have said, why don't you do 50,000? We don't want to do that because we want to make sure that we do this in a fiscally responsible way. Again, not pleasing everyone, but making sure that we keep that promise, but also do it in a smart, fiscally responsible way. Again, I'm going to use that word because that is what our process has been. And I use the example of the $350 billion in deficit reduction and the $1.7 trillion reduction in deficit with everything that we've been able to do. The American Rescue Plan, right? The bipartisan infrastructure legislation. And we are still, by the end of this fiscal year, will be at $1.7 trillion in deficit. All of those things matter. And that's the way that we look at it. I'm going to take one more. No, but I'm just saying that we have this is the actions that we have taken to show that we are taking this very, very seriously. I'm gonna go around. Matt, we can go back and forth on it. We can go back and forth on it. I was supposed to go to Chris in the back and I skipped him, so I'm gonna go back to Chris.
My question is about the marriage bill that is in the Senate.
You're not being respectful. Go ahead. To your colleagues, to your own colleagues. As you see, I jump. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Respect your colleagues. Respect your colleagues. Go ahead, Chris.
My question is, will the president reach out to Senator Schumer about scheduling a vote on that marriage bill when the lawmakers return from?
I'm sorry, Chris. You're going to have to start from the beginning because there was some disrespect happening.
This is the legislation for lawmakers upon they left upon Senate recess.
You're being disrespectful. Go ahead.
The marriage bill. Will Senator Schumer reach out for will the president reach out to Senator Schumer for a vote on the legislation when lawmakers return from recess?
So is the president going to, just make sure I heard this right, is the president going to reach out to Senator Schumer for a vote?
Yes.
Okay. So as you know, we are constantly in conversation with Congress, members of Congress. This is something that we put out a SAP when it first passed the House, supporting the marriage equality bill. This is incredibly important to the president. You heard from him back in, I believe, 2012, when he was one of the first voices to talk about how important marriage equality was, being ahead of many others. He has been an advocate for the community. He will continue to be an advocate for the community. So because of that SAP, it showed our support, saying this is something that we want to see pass. I'm not going to get into private conversations that we have had, but certainly that SAP that we put out shows how committed we are and how much we want to see that happen. Folks, I will see you tomorrow.
A religious combination to get the 60 votes that would be necessary to end a filibuster to get the process moving. Does the administration see value in such an amendment to the bill?
Say that one more time.
There's talk about an amendment to the bill that would allow for religious, some sort of religious accommodations in order to get the 60 votes to get the bill advanced. Does the administration see value
So,
in that?
as you know, we've always said we leave the mechanics of the Senate or Congress, in this case the Senate, to the Senate and the leadership, but we'll continue to have those conversations. This is an issue that is, and you know this, Chris, tremendously important to this president. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow.
Just 12% of the funds we need. In the Ethiopian region of Tigray, fighting resumed yesterday. It's tragic to see the resumption of active conflict. But in reality, the war had never stopped. For more than 21 months, the 6 million people of Tigray have been under a suffocating siege that has killed people not only with bullets or bombs, but by weaponizing banking, fuel, food, electricity, and healthcare. That's why we have been calling for the resumption of essential services and an end to the blockade systematically enforced by the governments of Ethiopia and Eritrea. The only solution is peace, and we continue to call for a peaceful resolution. The emergencies in Tigray and the Greater Horn are far from the only crisis in Africa. The Sahel region is facing one of the largest, fastest growing, and longest lasting crises in the world. across Burkina Faso, far north Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Niger, and northeast Nigeria, more than 33 million people are in need, and there are 6.7 million displaced people due to conflict, the worst drought in 40 years, and disease outbreaks. Last year, more than 3,600 people in the Sahel died with cholera, and transmission of yellow fever is at the highest in 20 years. Disrupted immunization campaigns due to COVID-19 have led to increasing transmission of measles and vaccine-derived polio. WHO has released $8.3 million from the Contingency Fund for Emergencies to cover life-saving services in the Sahel. But that's a fraction of the almost $63 million we need this year. We continue to urge donors not to forget the Sahel. Finally, earlier this week, health authorities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo confirmed a case of Ebola in the northeastern town of Beni, which was the epicenter of the 2018 to 2020 Ebola outbreak. So far, 179 contacts have been identified. Vaccination of contacts and contacts of contacts began today. Since the last major outbreak ended in 2020, there have been occasional flare-ups which have been brought under control immediately. WHO will continue to support health authorities in DRC and the province of North Kivu to respond to this case and to prevent further transmission. Last week, WHO published new guidelines recommending the use of 2 therapeutics against Ebola, which have demonstrated clear benefits in reducing deaths by about 60%. DRC has supplies of these medicines should they be needed. With highly effective vaccines and therapeutics, Ebola is now a preventable and treatable disease. Tariq, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros, for these opening remarks. I will just remind journalists to click the icon raise hand if they have a question to ask, and they can use any of 6 UN languages, Portuguese or Hindi. We will start with the first question, and that's Erin Prater from Fortune magazine. Erin, please go ahead. Do we have Erin? You would just need to press unmute button. Erin? We will try to come back to Erin.
Can you hear?
We can hear you now. Please.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that had changed. Thank you. Good morning. Just curious if there are any further developments as far as genetic sequencing of the variants that are currently circulating of monkeypox outside of Africa in this current global outbreak. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lewis, can you hear us and try to answer this question? Dr. Lewis?
Yes, thank you, Tarek. We are monitoring the situation and the genetic evolution of the virus, but we don't have further information at this time. Thanks.
Could you ask her to repeat
that? Dr. Lewis, the line wasn't really good. Can you just repeat, please?
Sure, I can try again to say that we don't have further information on genetic variants that are currently being reported. They continue to be uploaded on spaces where scientists can access them, and research is underway to assess those variants. We don't yet have information on what they mean in terms of genetic variability or in terms of phenotypic presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Just for all the reporters, I understand Dr. Lewis is on the train right now, so that's why the sound may not be the best. But I hope, Erin, that this answers your question. We will now go to Simon Ateba from Today News Africa. Simon, please.
Thank you, Tarek. Thank you for taking my question. This is Simon Ateba with Today News Africa in Washington, D.C. I personally believe that the WHO DG has been addressing health issues from around the world, not just in Ethiopia or Tigray. I just wanted him to address the accusation that he's using his position at the WHO to influence opinion on Tigray, where he comes from. Is that the case? And if you can also comment on Dr. Anthony Fauci, who will be leaving his position in December. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I think you could answer that question because you have been following our press regularly, and we comment on any country about health situation or health conditions, be it Syria or now Ukraine, Yemen, and other places. For instance, if I bring similar conditions like Tigray, if you take Syria, there are people who didn't have access to humanitarian aid, and WHO, as part of the other UN agencies, and myself, as one of the heads of the agencies, we have been pushing for unfettered access. Not only unfettered access, we have been even pushing for a corridor to keep a corridor to Syria from Turkey. On Ethiopia's issue, when we push for unfettered access, the responsibility is given to the Ethiopian government. But in Syria's case, the UN Security Council had decided to have a corridor through Turkey, and the UN has been supportive of this. So we always advocate for unfettered access and, access to medicines, access to food, and people to get the necessary support they need. And we have been doing the same thing in all conditions where there is the same problem. For instance, if you take the Syrian issue, it's resolved because there is another corridor. Even if the Syrian government doesn't want to let access, doesn't want to give access, there is another corridor through which those who need access get access. So I don't know why this is seen as a special, the Tigray one, but it's exactly the same. And I will repeat again, there should be unfettered access to support the more than 6 million people of Tigray. What makes it even very unique, the Tigray situation, is it's completely sealed off by both Ethiopian and Eritrean governments. So not only access to food is limited, it's trickling now, and access to medicine is very limited. Our programs, HIV program, TB program has collapsed, and people on chronic follow-up, hypertension, diabetes, they don't get medicine, so that has also collapsed. And many people that could be saved are dying because there are the more than 6 million people are completely sealed. What they get is a trickle. But not only that, not only the food and medicine, they can't have even access to their own money because banking service has been blocked for more than almost 2 years now. I told you last time, imagine if you were prevented by your own government from accessing your own money, Simon. Not just 6 million people, even one individual would be, I don't think would survive. You would survive. And then not only banking services, there is no telecom services. That's also blocked by the government, and electricity and other basic services. I will tell you my own story. I have many relatives there. I want to send them money. I cannot send them money. They're starving, I know. I cannot help them I cannot help them. I can help them, I can share from what I have. I cannot do that because they are completely sealed off. I want to speak to them. It's a long time since I have spoken to them. I can't speak to them. I don't know even who is dead or who is alive. Can you tell me any place in the same situation in the world? Simon? Can you tell me? So I'm talking about the 6 million people which are collectively being punished. And I can tell you, the world can do this. It has the means. For instance, the world came together 2 weeks ago and did a very good job in helping Ukraine to export its grains. Okay, that's a good job. But why can't we also push, as a global community, so that the 6 million people can get food to eat, medicines to be treated, and telecom to talk to their people, bank to access their money, and media so that they can speak and the world can know about their problems. Why can't we do that? Why can't we push for unfettered access? So unfettered access, asking for unfettered access for the opening of basic services, and for also asking the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government who are enforcing the siege systematically to end the siege is part of my job. I did it for Yemen. I have traveled there. I did it for Syria. I'm doing it for Ukraine. You remember my statement several times. All the reports we have been saying since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And we asked Russia to end the war many times. And we're also helping. What's different about Ethiopia? We're not actually doing as much as what we did in Syria. Maybe it's time to ask for another corridor to help the 6 million people, like what is being done in Syria. We can even push for that, of course, because this is about humanity, nothing else. I have no interest. That's my interest. And I will do it anywhere. I will do it for Yemen, I will do it for Ukraine, I will do it for Syria, I will do it for other countries. And I think, Simon, you know better, you have been following us, you can say it yourself, and others are also following. That's it. It's about humanity. I'm one of them. I am one of the 6 million people. That's personally hurtful, very painful. But at the same time, I'm doing it because 6 million people are human beings. Because I'm one of them, conflict of interest, whatever, what I should do, I should do. Like I do for others. I even did more for others. I think that's very, very clear. That's very clear. Then on my friend Tony Fauci, we have been friends for many years. I respect him dearly and greatly. He's an incredible scientist, amazing human being. And, you know, congratulations to him for, you know, all the job that he has done. I know retirement doesn't mean he will stop working. Retiring for him is like changing a tire, meaning another mission. And I look forward to continue working with him closely, through other things he will, I know, continue to do. So I wish him all the very best. Tony is so special, and everybody knows, I think. Thank you. Tariq?
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. Dr. Fall, would you like to add something?
Merci, Tariq. Juste pour ajouter quelques points sur les commentaires du Dr. Tedros. Je pense que chaque fois que des vies humaines sont en danger, le Dr. Tedros, en tant que directeur général de l'OMS, a souligné la situation. Même quand il y a un seul cas d'Ebola, il en parle. On l'a vu aujourd'hui. Quand il y a eu 3 cas de fièvre à virus Marburg, il en a parlé. Quand il y a des situations humanitaires extrêmes, il en a parlé. Mais le constat est que tous ceux qui sont engagés dans l'humanitaire sont déçus par les efforts de la communauté internationale par rapport à la situation au Tigré. Nous n'avons pas fait de progrès depuis plus de 21 mois. Et la situation de blocage a créé des conditions inhumaines. Et récemment, rien qu'en juin, l'évaluation du programme alimentaire mondial a montré que 89% des ménages sont en situation d'insécurité alimentaire. C'est presque toute la population. 65% des femmes qui allaitent sont en situation de malnutrition. On ne parle même pas des enfants qui allaitent. Donc l'accès aux médicaments, pratiquement de février 2021 jusqu'à avril 2022, nous n'avons pas pu envoyer des médicaments. Et la situation continue de se dégrader. Je pense que c'est une situation extrême qui demande des efforts exceptionnels de la communauté internationale pour sauver des vies. On ne parle même pas de l'excès de mortalité qu'il y a déjà eu pour des conditions que les médecins pouvaient traiter. Aujourd'hui, 80% des médecins et des travailleurs de santé ne vont pas dans les structures de sanitaire parce qu'ils ne sont pas payés et n'ont pas les conditions pour aller travailler, parce que même trouver à manger est un problème. Je pense que le monde doit agir maintenant, sinon c'est trop tard. Merci.
Thank you, Dr. Fall. We will now go to the next question. We have Trent Murray from Channel News Asia. Trent, if you can hear us, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, I just wanted to ask about the monkeypox situation, if I could. Obviously, numbers across APAC are still very, very low, but I would just be interested in whether the WHO is still speaking to governments there about possible vaccine rollouts in that region. And then just on the same theme, I was wondering whether I could get a WHO reaction to the news out of Singapore around the decision to decriminalize sex between men. I'm just wondering, from a health standpoint, do you think that that could help men who have sex with men in Singapore to perhaps be more willing to come forward to get appropriate health treatment more broadly? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So do we have Dr. Lewis still with us who can maybe try to answer?
So our West Pacific Regional Office and our Southeast Asia Regional Office, and response. So even countries that have no reported cases or few reported cases.
Dr. Lewis, unfortunately, the line is not very good, so we may try with the next question and then try to come back to question that was asked by Trent Murray from Channel News Asia, hoping that your line will be better. So let's just...
Tarek, this is Mike.
Yes, Dr. Ryan, please.
No, just Rosamond can come back in, or Sylvia, on how we're working with the Southeast Asia and Western Pacific countries. But I do think the point made by the journalist, the second point, very much welcome and celebrate the anytime congratulate the government and people of Singapore in terms of decriminalization of sex between men. It's always a positive step when we recognize and include all people in our society, when we are inclusive, when we are understanding, and we recognize and celebrate the diversity that we have within our communities. It helps. It takes diseases which may be driven underground and brings them into the open. It has so many positive benefits in so many parts of our society and so many parts of our culture, but it has a particular benefit in public health in ensuring that everyone has access to appropriate diagnostics, everyone has access to appropriate healthcare, and that we work together to control those diseases that threaten us all. So we would celebrate this event and would hope that countries will go further. Decriminalization is but one step towards full inclusion of everybody in our society.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan, very much on this answer for the second question. And on the first question, we will try, Trent, maybe to answer you in writing, if it's possible. Just send us an email. We may also need to get in touch with our regional colleagues who have a better overview of the situation there. Let's now go to Helen Collis from Politico. Helen?
Thank you. It's also a question for Rosamund Lewis, actually, so we will see how we go. But it was about the US saying it is now administering the monkeypox vaccine at 1/5 of the standard dose to stretch its supplies, and countries in Europe are now also considering the same thing. I wanted to get the WHO's response to this approach to vaccination with this vaccine and any concerns that there may be. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we can start with Dr. Kate O'Brien, who is online with us. Dr. O'Brien?
Yes, thanks so much for the question. And this strategy of what's termed using fractional doses for vaccines is not a new strategy for vaccines. There are a number of vaccines where this has been studied and evaluated. And there are reasons why the way you administer a vaccine and the dose that you administer it in can have impacts on the response of people who receive those vaccines in a positive way, depending on how those doses are administered. So this is not a new idea. And we are looking really carefully at the evidence for the performance of these vaccines, these smallpox, monkeypox vaccines, to look at the equivalence or, in fact, possibly the improved performance using fractional doses. And our strategic advisory group of experts will be meeting at the beginning of October to evaluate the evidence, and that includes looking at some of these fractional dose issues. Certainly there are national regulatory authorities who are also looking at the same evidence and making decisions. But what I really want to emphasize on the monkeypox vaccines is that we really don't have a very substantial amount of information about what their performance is. And so what's really important as they're rolled out in different countries is that we have careful evaluations and evidence that is actually generated so we can understand much better what their performance is, and especially in the context of this outbreak and the way that transmission is occurring in this outbreak. So those are two sort of big points that we want to encourage countries to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. Maybe we can just try to go back to Dr. Rosamund Lewis. We may have a better connection. Dr. Lewis, Dr. Ryan has answered the second part of the question we got from Channel News Asia, but maybe you can try to get something about a situation with monkeypox in that region. Dr. Lewis?
Thank you very much. Yes, we monitor very closely the situation in all the regions, and although we have now reached 99 countries with this outbreak, that's a sign that the outbreak will continue to spread, even if the numbers of cases are small in some areas. We're also very mindful that some countries may not yet be able to completely report, or that some people may still be concerned about accessing testing because of fear of stigma or discrimination. So the news from Singapore, as Dr. Ryan mentioned, is of course very excellent news that will reduce stigma and discrimination in certain areas. And for the other countries, the temporary recommendations that were issued after the declaration of the public health emergency of international concern were very clear, that there's an entire set of recommendations, which you can find in the report online, that are to help countries with their readiness, their preparedness and readiness, so that they have they already have their emergency committee, they already have their advisory groups in place in advance of even receiving the first case. This is critical for rapid response, and that way it will be possible for countries that don't yet have cases or very few cases to actually hopefully very much limit the spread in the countries at the time. So very much this is the case for Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific, as well as the regions that we must support those countries as we do for their readiness as well as for their response.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I hope those combined answers from Dr. Lewis and Dr. Ryan answer the question Trent had for us. And then we will go to Radio Free Asia. We have Sangmin Lee with us. Sangmin, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my questions. My question is about the North Korea, the COVID situations. North Korea today said it found 4 new fever cases in its border region with China that may have been caused by coronavirus infection. But this is 2 weeks after North Korea leader Kim Jong-un declared a victory of COVID-19. So I want to know, how do you assess COVID situation in North Korea as of now?
Thank you very much, Sangmin. Dr. Van Kerkhove?
I mean, I only have a very limited answer because I have very limited information on the situation there. We continue to offer support as best we can in terms of technical assistance, in terms of supplies, and we'll continue to do so. But the information that we are receiving is the same information that you are.
Thank you. Dr. Ryan, please.
Yeah, I thank you, Maria. I think it is important that it is difficult for WHO and has been and is difficult in other outbreaks as well. In engaging with our member states, when we're in a situation where it's very difficult to get information on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, it's very tough for us to give the necessary assistance to countries. We are here as a member state organization. We are constantly offering assistance, help, advice, materials, supplies to our member states. We're constantly bringing global expertise and regional expertise together on platforms that give support to our member states. But it is difficult to do that in a consistent way with the public health benefit at the end of that. If it's a constant struggle to get information, this is not only the case in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It is the case in a number of countries around the world, where issues around transparency and openness and engagement lead us to a situation where it is difficult for us to provide the necessary and adequate support. So we will continue, as Maria said, to offer support, to continue to try and give whatever support we can. But it's also very important that countries tell us what's going on within their countries, because we're tracking this virus. This virus can evolve in any part of the world. As we've seen in many, many countries on every continent, we've seen at times serious deteriorations in the situation, sometimes very unexpected. So it's very, very important that our member states keep us updated on the evolution of the disease within their borders, so that we can help them first and foremost, but also so we can keep the rest of the world informed of the situation, and we can build up a risk assessment that's based on reality and not on fantasy.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Thank you, Dr. Van Kerkhove. We will have time for one more question before we conclude today's press briefing, and we will call on Lynn Peterson from Trends in Medicine. Lynn, if you can hear us, please unmute yourself.
Thanks very much. So one of the big unanswered questions has been the safety of the blood supply. As I understand it, there's no testing being done of blood that's being donated, and donors aren't being tested. So what reassurance can we have that the blood supply is safe? This reminds me of the early days of HIV back in, say, 83, 84, when the blood supply actually got contaminated.
Thanks, Lynn. I suppose this question relates to monkeypox. So, Dr. Lewis, do we have anything on a blood supply regarding regarding monkeypox?
Hi, sure. I'll see if the video works too. Thanks very much for the question. So as you know, people are screened very carefully when they do come for donation of blood. So they're screened by symptoms, by fever, and that is the first line of screening that for anyone who's donating blood and for anyone receiving blood. The second thing is that, as we've heard, although some cases of monkeypox are severe, many are less severe and have fewer lesions. And for those, in all cases, the duration period of time that any virus might be in the blood is actually quite limited, which is why specimens are taken from skin lesions as opposed to taken from blood, because the viremia period is very short. So the probability of someone who is otherwise completely well also having viremia for monkeypox would be most unlikely. Not impossible, but very low probability.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis, and it was nice to see you on video as well. We will conclude today's press briefing. Our colleagues from audiovisual unit will send audio and video files later, and it will be distributed to our global media list. And the transcript of today's press briefing will be posted sometimes tomorrow morning. I wish you all a nice evening, and I give the floor for the closing remarks to Dr. Tedros.
Thank you, Tariq, and thank you to the members of the press for joining us today, and see you next time.
Hello to you people who are fighting for aggressive climate rescue in America because you love our species. Hello to everybody standing up for the dramatic reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the dramatic reduction of student debt in America. Hello to all of you fighting for lower prescription drug prices for people on Medicare in America. And hello to everybody standing up for the reproductive health and freedoms of the people of the United States. Hello! Now, I am here as the congressman for Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District, where you are right now. And I'm here as an ardent, true blue Democrat, no bones about it. But I wanted to start my brief remarks tonight on a bipartisan note by invoking our last great Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who spoke of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what we're fighting for today. That's what we're fighting for. And it was our first great Democratic president, Thomas Jefferson, who set forth in the Declaration of Independence the principles by which we live, the unalienable rights of the people to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the equality of all men and women, we would say today, and a government resting only on the consent of the governed and activated by progress towards a more perfect union. That's the Democratic Party today. That's who we are. And my friends, we are the party of Franklin D. Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt, and they saw fascists marching down the boulevards of Europe. They didn't see very fine people on both sides of the street. They knew exactly which side America needed to be on. We're on the side of democracy. We're on the side of freedom. We're on the side of human rights. That's who we are. That's who we are. And we are the party of the civil rights movement and John Lewis and the great Elijah Cummings. And we are the party of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we're the party of the For the People Act today and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We are the party standing up for the right of everybody to vote in America. And we're the party of the women's movement. Yes, we are. And we're the party of the Check It Out Equal Rights Amendment. That's who we are. And we are the party of pro-choice and reproductive freedom for every American. And we are the party of every American citizen having the right to travel wherever she wants to go, regardless of what the theocrats and autocrats and kleptocrats of the GOP say. We are for the right of people to go everywhere in America for whatever purpose they want. We are the party of the labor movement, are we not? We are the party of the National Labor Relations Act and the right to organize in America. And we are the party of the Fair Labor Standards Act and the minimum wage. And we are the party of the living wage in the richest country that has ever existed because of the work of our people. That's who we are. And we're the party of Medicare, and we're the party of Medicaid, and we're the party that built the Affordable Care Act. We are the party that stands for the principle that health care is the right of all the people, not a luxury for some people. And check it out, minutes away from NIH and FDA and NOAA, we are the party of science and facts and data. That's who we are. That is who we are. Now, my friends, I got a problem because, you know, when I go to work and I'm in the Judiciary Committee or the Oversight Committee, sometimes I've got colleagues across the aisle who cannot correctly pronounce the name of our party in its adjectival form. Because they'll say, well, there's that Democrat congresswoman with that Democrat bill and that Democrat amendment. And for years, I gently tried to explain, no, in the adjectival form, it's the Democratic congresswoman, the Democratic bill, the Democratic amendment. You know, the other day, I lost my temper. And I said, you know, your little self-imposed speech malady is contagious. Now every time I open my mouth, I try to say the name of your party, it comes out that banana Republican congressman and that banana Republican bill and that banana Republican amendment. But you know, if they really can't pronounce the name of our party, they should just do what FDR did. You know what Roosevelt did? You know what he called our party? He called our party the democracy. The democracy. He would make a speech before a beautiful Maryland crowd like this, and FDR would say, well, the royalists and the plutocrats say you invest money at the top of society and a little bit will drip down on everybody else. But the democracy says you invest in the working majority of America. We will all rise together. We will all rise together. That's what the democracy says. We're the party that defends free and fair elections against political coups and violent insurrections. And we stand with our great public servants like teachers and firefighters and police officers and doctors and nurses, and not the violent right-wing extremists who set upon hundreds of our officers on January 6th, wounding, injuring, hospitalizing more than 150 of them. That's not our side. We stand with the officers. We stand with the firefighters. We stand with the teachers. We stand with public servants in America. That's who we are. We're the party that just passed the most sweeping climate change legislation in the history of the world. We just did that because we love humanity that much. We're the party that just ended Big Pharma's power to set sky-high drug prices for people on Medicare by finally giving the government the power to negotiate for lower drug prices. It was a Republican committee chairman who slipped that rider in, saying the government couldn't negotiate with Big Pharma and Medicare, even though the government can do it in Medicaid, it can do it in the VA, but it cost us hundreds of billions of dollars over the years, that prohibition. And if they ever were to get back in office, if they were ever to take control of Congress, they would repeal the legislation we just passed, and again, they would stop us from negotiating for lower drug prices. Do you want lower prescription drug prices in America? That's the question. All over the world, my friends, all over the world, the autocrats and the kleptocrats, the bullies and the dictators have found each other. But under the leadership of President Joe Biden, the Democrats will beat the autocrats and the kleptocrats and the theocrats. We are going to stand for democracy and freedom and human rights all over the world. That's what America is. That's who we are. Joe Biden shows up for us every single day. Are you going to show up for Joe Biden in November? Are you going to show up and campaign until November? Are you going to show up for lower drug prices? Are you going to show up for climate rescue? Are you going to show up for reproductive freedom in America? My friends, I'm going to leave you with the words of two people I've held close to my heart through this tough period. One, the great Marylander, Frederick Douglass, born an hour away from here at the Wye River Plantation, into slavery. He escaped from slavery to become our great freedom fighter, our great abolitionist, all the way through the war and into the Reconstruction. And he said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. And the struggle may be moral, it may be physical, it may be moral and physical, but there must be struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. A message to you from the 19th century from a great Marylander, Frederick Douglass. And I leave you finally with the words of the great Tom Paine, after whom my son Tommy was named. And Tom Paine came to America 1774, 2 years before the American Revolution, 2 years before the Declaration, 2 years before he would write that explosive democratic pamphlet called Common Sense. And he looked out and he saw America and he fell in love with the dream of America, even seeing all of its flaws at the time. And he was an early abolitionist and he was an early feminist who wanted to give women the right to vote. But Tom Paine said that America would become an asylum to humanity. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but he said a place of refuge for people fleeing from political and religious and economic oppression from all over the world. And he said when America launched as the first modern democratic self-governing society, the cause of America would become the cause of all mankind. And so in 1776, after he wrote Common Sense, when we were in the American Revolution, it was a tough time like today. And the pro-democracy forces were running around saying, can we do it? Can we really beat the autocrats and the kings and the czars and the emperors and the monarchs? And everybody's saying, what's the message and who's doing the messaging and all that? And Tom Paine wrote this pamphlet called The Crisis, and I'm going to update the language a little bit for you. At the instruction of Speaker Pelosi, who said Paine wouldn't mind because he was an early feminist. And Tom Paine said this. He said, these are the times that try men and women's souls. These are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone who stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Let's make that victory ours in 2022 and 2024. Thank you, Maryland. Thank you, Democrats and Independents. And Liz Cheney, Republicans, too.
Please welcome House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer.
These are the times that try Steny Hoyer's soul following Jamie Raskin in that rousing speech that he just gave. I am told as I walked out here, the president is ready to speak. So I know the president is waiting with bated breath for me to give a 10 or 15-minute oration, just like the rest of you. What Jamie Raskin said is absolutely true of what and who we are, the Democratic Party, the party of democracy, the party of the people, by the people, and for the people. I've got a good speech here. Write me if you want to see it. But I do want to give this message. Joe Biden's not on the ballot technically, but Joe Biden's on the ballot. And Joe Biden needs your support. Joe Biden needs a Democratic Congress. Joe Biden needs the voice of the people to rise up and say, Joe Biden is doing what he said he would do. He kept families from falling through the cracks. He got shots in arms, so we're not here with masks for the most part. He got kids in school. He got money in pockets. And then he got a bill that's going to rebuild America, build it better and stronger and more competitive. That's what Joe Biden did. And then he passed a CHIPS bill. And both the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS bill said we're going to have organized workers who can bargain collectively, work on those projects. There has been no more pro-worker president in the history of the United States of America than Joe Biden. And then we passed the IRA for the USA. We want the ERA as well. Inflation is hurting our people, and we are empathetic, and Joe Biden says it's our #1 priority. And what did we do? We brought down costs for prescription drugs. We brought down costs for the Affordable Care Act. We provided jobs for people. 3.5% unemployment, 9.5 million people employed during the course of this administration, 2.5 million, 2.8 to be exact, million jobs lost during the Trump administration. All those policies are on the ballot. And Biden is on the ballot. But aren't we glad that we have somebody on our ballot named Wes Moore? A man of energy, of vision, of determination, who has vowed, as he did as the 82nd Airborne Division went to battle, leave no one behind. Not one. I call the Republican Party the yo-yo party. The yo-yo stands for you're on your own. We're not for minimum wage. We're not for protecting women against violence. We're not for women's freedom and choice. That's the party of you're on your own. We're not for helping you with climate crisis. You're on your own. Ladies and gentlemen, Wes Moore knows that you're not on your own. He is going to be by your side, whoever you are, wherever you are in this state. and Aruna Miller from this county, and Anthony Brown as Attorney General, and Brooke Learman as Comptroller of our state. What a team! What a team for Maryland! What a team for the people! And so, because Joe Biden is ready to speak, I think it's about time for me to leave the stage, but I want to do so. I got into politics because John Kennedy came to the University of Maryland and talked about young people. A lot of young people here. And apparently there are a lot of people who think they're young. Kennedy was elected President of the United States, and he gave a great inaugural address. You ought to read it. And he said this: the energy, the faith, the devotion we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. My fellow Democrats, my fellow Americans, my fellow independents, my fellow Republicans who respect truth and facts and science. Our country, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence needs our energy, our faith, and our devotion, because democracy and our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence is on the ballot. The great Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, wrote a book, Fascism, A Warning, in which she talked about fascist after fascist after fascist. We think it can't happen here. We hold these truths to be self-evident. But ladies and gentlemen, they are not self-executing. It relies on us. We can get the job done. You bring your energy, your faith, and your devotion to electing Wes Moore, a Democrats throughout the Congress of the United States. We've got two great United States senators. Ben Cardin's going to speak after me. Chris Van Alla, I think, was on the video. But we're in this together. One nation, indivisible. Too many people in the Congress of the United States stand up, put their hand over their heart, and give that Pledge of Allegiance. But they don't mean indivisible, because they're trying to divide America by race, by gender, by nationality, by whatever arbitrary distinction you want to make. But we are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is up to us. God bless you. Godspeed. Thank you.
I've been across our state meeting Marylanders from all different backgrounds and talking about the issues that matter to us, to workers who want to provide for their families, to teachers who spend their time uplifting the next generation, and students who are furthering their education, to women who have had abortions and want to make sure our rights are preserved, to young people who are working to protect our planet from climate change. And when I talk to my fellow Marylanders about what Democrats are doing to improve their lives, I have a lot to say. Just yesterday, President Biden fulfilled a campaign promise and took an incredible step to cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for millions of Americans. Nearly 90% of relief dollars will go to borrowers earning less than $75,000 per year, helping those who need it most. Democrats are lowering costs and making healthcare and energy more affordable through the Inflation Reduction Act, capping prices on insulin and prescription drugs for seniors, siding with people over special interests, and ushering in the most historic climate legislation to ever exist. Democrats stood up for labor and the economy by passing the CHIPS Act to create good-paying American jobs and strengthen American supply chains and support workers. And we are the party fighting for fundamental freedoms, while extreme MAGA Republicans are focused on cutting health care, Medicare, and Social Security and taking us backwards on abortion. The choice in November could not be more important. The people I talk to across the state are fired up. Progress happens when people like us go to the polls, make our voices heard, and vote for real leaders. That is what we have to do on November 8th. We have to get out and vote for Democrats in Maryland, up and down the ballot. That's how we're going to continue to make people's lives better. To take action and join us in doing everything we can to support Maryland, to elect Maryland Democrats, go to joebiden.com. The stakes are too high, and we have the power to keep making a change. Now, I am proud to introduce one of the trailblazing changemakers that we will elect this November. A leader who understands Maryland and is fighting for opportunity for all of us. Our next governor, Wes Moore.
What's going on, Montgomery County? It is great to be here in the place of my birth. It is great to be here in one of Maryland's true treasures. It is great to see you. And it is great to be here in the hometown of your next Lieutenant Governor, the remarkable Aruna Miller. Andrea, bless you. Bless you for your leadership, because the way we are going to win this race, it is going to be door to door, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. We are going to win this race because we are going to outwork everybody. And I'm thankful for your leadership. I'm also so incredibly thankful for our federal delegation. You heard earlier from Senator Cardin, from Leader Hoyer, who I always say, that's not just a title, that's a descriptor of who he is in terms of Leader Hoyer. We have the best federal delegation that anybody could ask for. And we're all educators out here. I am so grateful to be out here with so many educators. We thank President Biden, and also we thank President Biden, but also, let's not forget, we thank our remarkable First Lady, Dr. Joe Biden as well. Who is an extraordinary champion for our schools, an extraordinary champion for our community colleges. I always say, and by the way, this right here is home to the extraordinary Montgomery College. And I always say I'm proud of the fact that I'm the only candidate in this race with an associate's degree. And people laugh and they're like, but hold on, you were the first black Rhodes Scholar in the history of Johns Hopkins University, but the ring you wear is from your junior college. And I tell people that's right, because it's my foundation. And what we have to ensure is that every single child and every single student has a chance to find their own foundation as well. You know, my family likes to say we come from a long line of preachers and teachers. And I got a whole lot of family out here tonight. I got family, aunts who are educators. I got cousins who are educators, mother-in-law. Both my grandmothers were educators. We come from a long line of preachers and teachers, and I know that I would not be here had it not been for educators who saw a promise in me when, frankly, I did not see it in myself. I would not be here had it not been for educators who saw a young man who was dealing with troubles and traumas, but who knew that our society should have a place for me as well. And I know that I'm proud to be here with my amazing mom, who's right over there. Stand up, Ma, stand up. Stand up so they can see you. My mother, who was an immigrant from Jamaica. Yeah, man. All the yardies out there. Who raised my two sisters and I as a single mom when my father died in front of me when I was almost 4 years old because he didn't get the health care that he needed. And there are people who believed and fought and advocated for us. That I know that when I first felt handcuffs on my wrists, I was 11 years old. Because we came up in communities that were over-policed, and we knew it. And despite those challenges, I had a community who believed, and a community who understood that we were going to leave no one behind. And when I was, when I was 17 years old, I joined the Army. In fact, I was too young to sign the paperwork when I first joined the Army. My mother had to sign the paperwork for me. But after my teenage years, she would sign whatever paperwork that the Army put in front of her. But they taught us a basic mantra. A mantra they asked us to live by, and I did. Leave no one behind. Leave no one behind. And I want to be clear, that is not just a mantra, that is a value statement. And let's also be clear, come January, that will be the new mission of the state of Maryland. We will be a state that leaves no one behind. We are going to be a state that's going to ensure that every Marylander can receive a world-class education and a lifelong education that creates pathways to work and wages and wealth. We are going to be a society that is going to make historic investments in apprenticeship programs and trade programs. We are going to be a state that is going to make pre-K free for every child in need. We are going to be a state that is going to create a service year option for every single high school graduate. which is not just going to make college more affordable, but it's also going to be a unique opportunity for people to be able to give back to our larger society and our larger community. And when it comes to our economy, we know and we are going to focus on the very people that actually drive our economy's growth, our small businesses and our workers. So, you know, I've run a small business, and I know how hard it can be to build, to feel supported, to have your hard work and also your risk-taking recognized. And we are going to ensure that our state is not going to be the best place to live and to grow, but also to retire by allowing our seniors to age in place and to age with dignity. Maryland, listen, this is our time. This is our decade. This is the time when Maryland is going to lead. Now, I do want to be clear, though. You know, ever since our primary win, it's been amazing how many people have come up and said, you know, isn't it great that Dan Cox won and you're running against Dan Cox in the general? My answer is clear and it is consistent. Do not underestimate what we're against. Do not underestimate what we are up against. It is not great that come November we are running against an election denier. You know, for me, patriotism meant leaving my family and putting on our nation's uniform and serving with the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan. And I'm proud of the fact that one of my brothers who I serve with, Devin Flavin, is here tonight as well, and God bless you, Flavin. It's great to see you, man. But let's be clear, for our opponent, patriotism for him means organizing buses to join him on January 6th. It's not a wonder why our current governor, a Republican, Larry Hogan, has said he will not support him, and in fact, he went further to say, I wouldn't even give him a tour of the governor's office. But Dan Cox is not an opponent. He's a threat. And let's be clear, a threat to women in Maryland who deserve to make their own health care decisions and who have access to safe and legal abortions. A threat to our responsibility that every child in the state of Maryland has access to a world-class public school. A threat to those who believe in free and fair democracies, and a threat to the Constitution that I swore to defend. But I also want people to understand this too. The reason that we are going to win in November is not because we are asking people to be afraid of something. The reason that we are going to win in November and up and down the ballot all across the state is because we are going to give Marylanders something to believe in. And I'm not just talking about Democratic Marylanders. This is a time for all Marylanders to rally around a future not based in lies and conspiracy theories, but one that's based in optimism, concrete proposals, and collective progress. And when people ask me, well, how do you think you can do this? How do you think in this kind of climate that you can actually bring people together? My answer is this. It's how I've always led. It's how I've always led. And my answer is this. You know, I tell people, when I was leading soldiers in combat in Afghanistan, you know a question I never once asked my soldiers? What's your political party? It didn't matter. We had one job, one goal. My mission, my objective, was to rally our entire unit around a singular goal and to accomplish it collectively. It didn't matter. And I know right now people are tired of being at each other's throats, especially because we don't have to be. That we can actually believe and dream together and accomplish big things together. And that's why today I'm asking all Marylanders to remember that our best days are actually ahead of us, and that we together can build a state where those who came before us, that they hope for, and those that will come after us, that they deserve. So I'm asking all of Marylanders to remember this is our time. My name is Wes Moore, the son of an immigrant, a combat veteran, a proud graduate of a junior college, and I'm fighting for a Maryland where we leave no one behind. And, I can't wait till January, y'all. I can't wait till January. And I am so thrilled and excited that I am also about to introduce a person who knows a thing or two about lifting people up when times are tough. Because that's who Joe Biden is.